Welcome everybody to N 90 Minutes Extra Time, our second episode. Still in the preseason here, previewing all things Orlando City. You guys, every episode is going to kind of be like the second episode or the first episode. I'm sorry, where we just talk Orlando City, whatever kind of comes up, and we just go from there and. Today we have David G with us. Luke was on here. I guess he's having some technology problems. There he is. David, why don't you tell, for those of you that, don't know you, don't know your history, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Kind of roll back the curtain from the reporter we see on X.
Yeah, no problem. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate that. For those of you that may have been around the internet for a while, my kind of big sort of first start and things I got noticed for is I'm actually one of the moderators on the Orlando City subreddit. I joined about 5 or 6 years ago when the subreddit only had about 4,500 people on it. Now we're well over 11,000. So we've grown it to a pretty sizable number. So that's pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, sort of this off season, I decided to kind of take my takes and coverage up another level. So I've really been kind of harnessing mostly X, but a little bit of Instagram and some other stuff to kind of report on some things and catch things before they kind of become much bigger for the fan base. So I cover under my pseudonym Fladoodler18. Which is a nickname that goes all the way back to high school. So those that know me from high school are going to know exactly where that came from. But yeah, I've been following the club since they made the jump to MLS. At the time, I was more of a casual fan than I was sort of a diehard. But after sort of the first season and a half, I decided to get real serious about it and really follow the club. And then the first year they made the jump to Orlando City Stadium, I decided to get season tickets. I figured it was time to really jump all in and do my thing. So that's what I ended up doing. And ever since then, I've been a season ticket holder with that through a lot of weird, I've had a lot of weird seats in the stadium and various other things like that. But yeah, it's been a pretty awesome time and this consumes a lot of my life, but for a very positive reason. So I'm all here for it.
Definitely. It's, what you do is a lot like podcasting. We pay all this money out just to get hurt.
Yeah.
More times than not, because there's only one team that ends the season with ends the season, the full season, with a win, and 99 times out of 100, that's probably not going to be your team.
Yeah.
But jumping into it, we touched on it on the main show, and kind of went over it a little bit. Is our current roster, our current depth chart. We touched on it at the end too. Or I touched it on the end too, and how bare bones, especially our central attack is, as well as our defense is. Obviously we need to do something. Obviously, the rumors there for Lago, but at the same time, which I know you watched the show because you were able to catch Fabian, the Fabian being on and everything.
Yeah, I caught the back half, but I did hear his sort of speech about we're kind of boom or bust, right? We're either going to squeak in or we're probably not going to get there at all. And then I really caught it at the end where sort of Oscar's on the hot seat, which is something that I know some podcasts, and for those of you that don't know, I'm also on Loud and Proud Orlando weekly now. Funny story how that started, but really I started as a guest and then they were like, hey, we really would love a third. And I kind of got on there. And one of the reasons I joined Loud and Proud is because I feel like I give them a different voice than what you normally would hear from Luis and John. And I don't want to take that away from either one of them. I think they just have a unique way to look at things. They're a lot more positive than a lot of podcasters and media are in the space. Whether you like that or not, I'll leave that, of course, up to you and how you feel about that. But I think I bring a level of realism, and I think the conversation about Papi is interesting because one of the first things I said when I came on the show is his seat should have been hot and he should have been out the door last year. The fact that this guy got another year is astounding to me. To me, what I really felt like, and I know a lot of fans in the fan base felt this way, showed a club without ambition. Because to me, if you really wanted to go for it, last season was your perfect excuse to say, Oscar, thanks so much, but there's the door. And especially with Ricardo taking the reins in that second window, because again, he was getting some hand holding from Luis Muzi, I feel like, in the first part of it, which makes sense. There was a handoff and all that, and I get that. But with the winter window, this window being Ricardo's first big window, this was, I think, the way to make a statement and say, Oscar, thanks, but that's it. And then based on reporting that we've heard, and obviously I'm sure you guys have heard it and other people have as well, there were some serious conversations in the offseason with Oscar, right? Between Oscar and Ricardo and ownership and the whole 9 yards. And from what we've heard, Oscar was given an ultimatum. You've got to bring trophies to Orlando. And if you don't, then you're not the right guy for it. I don't, and I know you guys have heard this in the past, and I'm sure you agree with me on this. Oscar continues to say, and he said this every season since he's been here, I know when my time will be up and I'll leave when it's time for me to leave. Guys, no coach does that, right? Every manager is going to tell you that until they're blue in the face. I don't believe that he's going to have the wherewithal to say, okay, it's time for me to go. And so I think the bigger conversation before we start talking about the kids is Oscar the right guy to get you to navigate through this season into silly season next year, because we're getting that really funky middle season, and then onto your schedule flip afterwards. And right now, and I've said that since the beginning of the offseason, I don't think he's the guy to do it. I hope he proves me wrong, but I'm not convinced right now. And then his statements on the first day of training camp prove exactly what we're talking about. He was defensive. He threw shade at the front office for not giving him the right players and bringing them in at the right time. He talked a lot about compromise and having to do things he didn't necessarily want to do. It's all just excuses building up to what he's hoping is what he's probably expecting is a slow start. And I'm sorry, but you've been here long enough to not have a slow start anymore. You can't use the excuse of gelling anymore. So I think you guys hitting on that at the end with Fabian about, like, is he on the hot seat? Absolutely. And if he's not, it's a mistake again from the front office. Because just like players, there will be a lot of coaching available in the middle of the year once the World Cup wraps up. So I think that's the start of the conversation before we get into the kids, because it's going to be on Oscar whether or not these kids work out or don't work out.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'll let you go after I say this. Like, it's funny you bring up that first interview, because I started to see that shift in Oscar and kind of relaying the blame elsewhere in his post game press conferences a lot last year. It was like, oh, we wanted to do this, but the players did this, and obviously I'm being very vague in that, but that's kind of how a lot of his press conferences went. Is, oh, we wanted to be more attacking, but we couldn't, and I found that very jarring, to be honest with you, to hear a coach in his first day of training camp, first day of preseason training, come out and say that about the front office. And we all also know that Muzi and Oscar were boys, and he, maybe it's because he feels like a little freer that he can say things now, because he's not going to potentially hurt his friend. But yeah, it was jarring to me. Everybody knows my position on Poppy. I don't agree with his preferred style of play. I prefer a more, aggressive front foot approach to it. Control the possession, yes, but control it in the opponent's end. Because and be creative in the attack when the chances present itself, because I feel like that's the creation in the attack is the biggest thing that our teams lacked over the entirety of Poppy's tenure here. Is a lot of our goals, going back with Nani, was typically it was an individual moment of brilliance versus a good team goal. Go ahead, Luke. What do you think? No, I don't think anybody's ever really heard your take on Poppy, and
I just think when it comes to him, he's when your time is up, your time is up, and that is just the simple thing about it. And that we spoke about the ceiling in the podcast before, and he has reached his ceiling. There is nothing. There is no ifs, buts, and there's nothing more that's going to happen from this. The Eastern Conference Final was his ceiling, and I even think then he was kind of pushing his luck on the Eastern Conference Final. I didn't think we were going to make it, but what an opportunity we had in that final. We were playing at home to, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the wild card team that was They made it all the way through.
Yeah, Red Bull
Yeah,
was
they
a
were the
wild card
wild
team,
card
and
team
then I
at
believe,
the
yeah,
time. What an opportunity to get into an MLS Cup final,
Mhm.
and you play the same style of play over and over and over again at home, and that is what bites us every single time. People want to see attacking football. People want to see you go at the team and play like you're at home. They don't want to see you play like you're away. Trust me, if we played all these games away from home, we'd be a brilliant team, because that's how we play. We play like we're away from home. But you need to stop being one dimensional and start getting multi-dimensional in your style of play. And I'm not convinced that he will bring a new style of play next year. We will
yeah.
see.
And I mean,
We will.
Fabian alluded to it, Luke.
Yeah, we will see
We're,
the same thing. Yeah.
yeah, no, sorry. Where he said, we're almost an MLS 5.0 type of deal, because you look at what Poppy did with Dallas, and then he went down and coached in Mexico for, I don't even think he made it half a season.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
And you look at what the goals his teams have scored, and yes, we scored a lot of goals last year. Cool. And it's kind of because David, I don't know if you're aware, but I know the regular listeners are aware. I canceled my season tickets. I ended up, because of me being me and wanting to go to the stadium, got a half season ticket plan.
Okay.
Several months later. But the one thing my ticket rep was saying to me to try to convince me to keep my season tickets was, well, we scored more goals than we scored in our entire any season in our entire history, and we have the 3 DPs leading the league. I said, honestly, if we took one of those DPs out, we'd still be top 3 because Muriel didn't contribute hardly anything last year.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, and plus, if you look at it, I said, you're looking at it a macro perspective. You got to realize you're talking to somebody that, not to your extent, David, but
Yeah.
Really tries to have a micro outlook on the team and see where the
Sure.
team's going to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you look at what we've done. You look at those 3 straight draws we had in late March, early April, 4 straight, whatever it was.
Yeah.
0-0 draws. You look at if one of 3 people, if you want to include Freeman in there, aren't getting a goal contribution, we're not scoring.
Right.
And that's an issue. You look at our left winger at the, still on the team.
Yep.
Had 0 goal contributions in the league. Maybe 1. He might. I think he did sneak 1 in where
He got an assist in like the back end of the season.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I think he had 3 or 4 total goal contributions. I know he had a couple assists and a goal in League's Cup.
Right.
But that's contribution a backup player gives you, and then you look at the things that we've seen since Poppy's been here.
Yeah.
I bring it up on the podcast all the time, quite frequently, where you see our front line when we're in the attack and we're in a quote unquote set. There's 0 movement. That's the one thing Duncan did so well when he broke onto the scene in 23, is that he was the only one moving and trying to create space for others and himself. Nobody on our front line. We will have 3 or 4 players running straight, even with the back line of the defense, or and not moving. You look at any of the other top leagues, or even, and this isn't discounting them, but leagues in South America, you at least have 1 or 2 guys. Yes, if you have a big target man striker, he's taking that center position and not moving because he wants to get the cross in.
Right.
But you have the others around him, the center midfielder, the weak side winger, maybe another midfielder, kind of making different runs and different movements to create space for each other. And we just haven't seen that. We haven't seen that crucial position when we get the ball in the corner of the 18 extended, where there's almost always one of the midfielders, whether it's attacking mid or like a number 8, like we have in Atuesta, taking that position. So the ball is literally one pass away. That second pass is getting into, to the top of the D.
Right.
And, I really feel like with that being the theme, and we brought it up in the show, that the league has, as a whole, has passed up the tactics Poppy has used with the way we've changed, with the money that's being spent on attacking players.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell us 3 years ago Timo Werner's joining the league, we would have laughed at you.
Yeah. 100%. Well, and I think the other thing that's the most damning thing for me last season, and I was not in this boat, and I understand why people were not, but when we got as far as we did in Leagues Cup, I was one of those people that said go for it. When you made it that far at that point, I understand we got screwed against Miami. I obviously I watched the game. I was just as infuriated as everybody else was. But when you made it that far and you had the opportunity to play in the third place game against a very bad LA Galaxy team at the time who was still tumbling and trying to figure out what to make of their season, you should have easily won that third place game, number one. But even with all the travel, because I don't want to use that as an excuse. These are professionals. They understand what they need to do. The coaching staff knows what they need to do in terms of recovery. I'm not allowing that to be an excuse. I'm sorry, I think it's stupid. But the bigger thing more than any of that, putting all of that aside, is Poppy let them free fall after the Leagues Cup loss. This team never figured out how to rebound after that Leagues Cup loss. And I think it falls on two people in particular. It falls on Poppy himself, of course, because he couldn't motivate these guys. But secondly, where was the captain at? Like, I don't want to throw shade at Robin Janssen, but this is what a captain is supposed to do. He's supposed to get these guys up for it and make sure they're ready for it. And if the coach isn't connecting with them, at the very least, the captain is going and doing that for them. And it was just absent last year. I don't know if it was because Janssen was just more worried about himself because of all the knocks that he took all season or whatever that was, but there was no leadership from anybody in that locker room to say, okay, Oscar's not going to motivate us, so we've got to motivate ourselves. What can we do to go do that? And they just never figured it out. And we tumbled from a solid playoff spot and a chance to get a CCC spot, which now in hindsight, I'm kind of glad we didn't get because we blew up this roster and we would have been in a awful shape to play in CCC this year. But besides all of that, you would have been in a much better playoff spot, not playing Chicago away in a play-in game that did not count as the playoffs. Because again, I agree with you guys. It's not a playoff game. Sorry. And sorry, club, for the $60 t-shirts and whatever you put on sale to try to pitch that to us or whatever that was. But where was all of that? I don't understand. And then to put the icing on the cake, like you talked about earlier, John, he goes into the post-game press conference for Chicago and he's got nothing to say. He's got nothing to say except, passing blame a little bit. Janssen's got nothing to say because I think at that point Janssen thought he probably wasn't coming back and he probably shouldn't have been signed back, to be honest with you. But I think at that moment he was thinking, I'm probably not back. I'm sure there were other people in the locker room at the time that figured I'm probably not back. But that's the way it should have been. And that's been my argument all offseason. And I understand the roster's thin, and I share the frustration and concern right now, especially after the Dusan move falling through and all that kind of stuff. And I feel, again, I agree with you guys on the show. I think the club is handling it the right way. You don't want to bring in another broken player, especially with what you have going on. But this is concerning. We're 18 days from kickoff? Really, as far as I'm concerned, you're 11 days from what your squad should be, because going into Montreal, that should be your squad of what that looks like. So even if we get Iago over the line, for example, right? He's still going to need time to clear his visa. He's still going to need time to practice with this club. So who's going to start next to Brecalo? Nolan Miller? He's been solid all preseason, but he's a college kid and he hasn't spent a ton of time with Orlando City.
Yeah,
so
center backs notoriously need time to settle in. It's a tough position to get.
Exactly.
It's a partnership duo. It's not like you're going up top and scoring goals and you're that guy.
Yeah. The only benefit you're going to get from Iago in this situation compared to anybody else you're bringing in is he has been regularly training and he played a game as recently as 10 days ago. So he's going to be fit and up for the challenge. The problem is, like Luke is saying, he's not going to have the familiarity with Brecalo at all, right? At least with Dusan, because they know each other from their youth Slovenian international days, because that's how they know each other, they would have at least had some bit of relationship there and maybe could have played off that as they're feeling each other out and figuring that out. But also, a lot of fans were like, Dusan might have to play right back because, we sold Alex Freeman and our only option right now is Taifi. And I like Taifi, but look at the first 3 games that Orlando City has to start the season. They've got Red Bulls at home, they've got Miami at home, and then they're away at NYCFC. Those are all very difficult games to start the season against teams that are going to make it difficult, and then we have to play in that stupid baseball field against NYCFC, and we know Orlando City does not do well in those games in those kind of fields. So the bigger thing about all of this, though, is that with the wheels falling off last season, with Poppy starting with his very angry press conference for whatever that was, and I'm not really sure why it was so angry at that point. Something's got to give here. So he's got, and he, as far as I'm concerned, he's got to be the one to do it, because Ricardo, yeah, we're still body short in terms of pure numbers, right? But as far as what Ricardo has brought in so far, I think he's upgraded in certain positions. I think Brian Ojeda is an upgrade in the midfield. No doubt about that, right? Getting Wilder Cartagena back and healthy is, to me, is an addition to the team. We didn't have him all season last year. He's an addition to have him in. I think Otavio will be a better player than Cesar. It's going to take him a little bit of time, but he's going to be a better player than Cesar. When you look at the left wing, I hope to God Angulo doesn't start, but we know Poppy's going to find a way to get him on the field. Spicer had a heck of an end of the season last season. He went into the international break with Trinidad and had an even better time with Trinidad as well. I know he picked up a knock and he couldn't play in the second game for them, but he had a really nice first game. And Thiago's the real deal. If you haven't seen this kid play for Bahia, he is the real deal and then some. The problem is Oscar's been playing him out of position all preseason. For what reason, I have no idea. And again, I think this all goes back to the point of Oscar doesn't want to really use the kids unless he has to. And it's an infuriating way to build this team. But Ricardo is doing it in the fact of he's not giving them a choice. He's basically being like, these are the players you're going to get and you're going to like it and you're going to figure it out, or you're not. And then you're going to be out the door. So it's going to be really interesting. And I know fans aren't going to want to hear this. They don't want to see a slew of young players come into the starting 11 and try to make a real impact. I get it. But this team isn't built that way right now. We just don't have the players for it. And you can blame Ricardo a little bit. Sure, I'm in that camp a little bit of I think this has been too slow, and I think he might have bit off more than he could chew in his first window. This probably should have been a multi-window, let's phase some dudes out, let's bring some dudes in, let's phase some dudes out. But he decided to go for the whole thing, and I guess power to him for it. But this team might start off slow because we don't have the talent or the depth right now. Do I think some of them might meet the level? Sure. But also I know Fabian mentioned this too, I'm not as high on Crepeau as he seemed to be. I get that he's a good chemistry guy and all that kind of stuff. But from pure stats over the last 3 or 4 years since his leg break, he has not been in the top 15 performing goalkeepers. He's normally middle of the pack or lower. That's concerning when you have a defense in front of you that doesn't have depth. So you got to think about that and what that looks like. The only thing I think you really have going for him is that he is motivated to make not only the World Cup squad, but he does want to start for Canada. So you hope that there's enough motivation there to get him over it. But we all know Dane St. Clair is a better skilled goalkeeper than he is. So he's going to have to really outperform a lot of his metrics to go and do that. So I just think it's interesting. And we're going to get into the young kids, I'm sure, shortly, but they're going to play a key whether Oscar wants to do it or not. They're going to have to play a role in this team. And as you guys have talked about a lot with Thomas Williams, there are certain kids he doesn't want to play. He just doesn't have an affinity for some of these kids and he doesn't play them.
Yeah, and you bring up Thomas, and obviously I watched a lot of OCB. I'll continue to watch a lot of OCB.
Yeah,
Thomas, the relationship that my family has with Thomas and his family was because we watched so much OCB. It wasn't vice versa. We didn't watch OCB because of Thomas. But you look at what OCB did last year, and the matches Thomas wasn't able to be there because he had to go sit the bench for 90 minutes, elsewhere, and he wasn't there. The defense struggled. The defense was unorganized. They could. It was a tough watch.
Right.
And so you look at somebody, and I know we're going in kind of leaning into talk with playing the kids, which, like I said, is fine with me. It's almost, you look at somebody like Freeman the year prior on OCB, somebody that changes a game that you can go, that dude's the player that, to me, on the defensive end, and obviously center backs aren't scoring goals, so it's a lot harder to go, that dude's scoring a bunch of goals, he should be moved up.
Right.
Again, micro versus macro things. And you look at what Thomas was doing, and I try to look at it through an objective lens, because I want to be doing a podcast, and you want to look like you know what you're talking about. And if I'm looking
absolutely.
at it because Thomas gave my son a couple of seconds after every match, and and his family knows who we are and everything. I'm looking at it because he's friendly with us, and I'm saying, oh, you should play him. I'm not going to do that. And you look at what he was doing in the match and his presence in the match and his calm over the ball, when getting pressed and stuff like that. I'm like, this dude is playing below his level right now, and to me, it shows. Nashville didn't sign another center back after Zimmerman left,
Right. Yeah.
and it's like, to me, that means they got Thomas because they saw what Thomas does on the reserve squad and think he has a chance to be their one of their starting center backs. And and it's like, I'll even go a step further. You brought up Taifi. We brought up Taifi.
Mhm.
And it's like, yes, he is and this isn't negative to him because I enjoy watching him play. I think he has, a very high ceiling and will be playing in Europe and has a chance eventually, not now, eventually to, make the Moroccan team, which is saying something.
Sure.
But I feel because of the way the way things are now that the talent gap between the reserve squad and the senior squad across the league is so big that it's something that needs looked into. What were you going to say, Luke?
I think with Thomas specifically though, is like he had that ability and like he was so tall. Like he was such a tall centre back for such a young age. And it was like the whole point of a B team or a reserve team is that you eventually bring these players through.
Right.
Like you don't want these players just playing for OCB for the rest of their lives. So all respect to Thomas, he has a career to make.
Sure.
He has a career to go to, and that is like all respect to him. I wish him the best, but it's Pereira, and in this position, he is. It's stubbornness. It's stubbornness in his own ways.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Freeman, he thought he was that much of a phenom. Like he forced his way into that team. He had no choice.
Yeah.
He had absolutely no choice but to pick him. And look at him now. Like
right.
But with Pereira, unfortunately, he is an old manager, and old managers have their ways, and they're not going to change now.
Right. So, well, and I'll say this, Luke. I think and kind of speaking to what John was saying too. I think what'll be interesting with Ricardo now, like really at the helm and kind of shaping this the way he wants to. He's stolen. Well, we're about to steal our third Brazilian from down there, and a lot of these guys, obviously, before Thiago made his jump to the main team for Bahia, Luis Otavio made his jump for the main team for Internacional, and then obviously. Iago hasn't had a ton of first team minutes compared to the other two, but he's had some. Is the academies in Brazil are no joke. The U20 teams are legit, right? They play each other just as hard as the first teams do. They manufacture a lot of talent. I know Flamengo and Palmeiras and stuff like that. They buy just like they do in the other big leagues. They buy from the crappier Brazilian teams and they steal all their talent and all that kind of stuff and whatever. But I think to a degree, some people are waiting for that to naturally happen with MLS Next Pro, and I just think they're too far away from getting there. I think you're still probably 10 years, 15 years away from that happening. So my suggestion has always been that if you truly feel like you don't have spot for somebody on your main squad, but they are better than the level, and we've seen a ton of players, not just for us, but for other, MLS 2 teams across the league, we have to get back into the idea of loaning them to USL Championship teams if you don't think that they're not at your first team level, but they're definitely better than your other level. I understand there's risk there, right? You can't guarantee playing time. You can't guarantee, they're going to get everything that you want out of it, but you have to continue to challenge these kids or you're doing them a disservice to go and do that. Like, I'm sorry, but what benefit was Thomas Williams getting sitting on the bench for 90 minutes, knowing he's probably not going to get called into the game, watching every other person get a shot at center back except for him, and people who were even playing out of position, like Kyle Smith and all these other people, and if Wilder was available last season, he probably gets in over Thomas Williams as well at a center back role. So, like, what's the point for someone like him? What they should have done is called up a championship team and said, are you looking for a quality center back? Great. We've got a guy here for you. We'd like to loan him out for the season. And if we need him, we're going to give you a call back and bring him back. But we think he's going to benefit from doing this. And if he balls out at USL Championship, then you have no choice to go do that. But it all goes back to what Luke was saying about Oscar's got to be motivated enough to do those things. And I don't think he is. He's never been. I think strikers are the only people he can really speak to because he was one. So I think that's where he feels like he can really develop these guys. And of course, we've seen him go and develop, all these different strikers that we've had, like DK and Maguire and all these other people that he's been able to do it with. And I'm sure Harvey's his next pet project and all that kind of stuff. But like for defenders and stuff like that, I feel like he doesn't have a care in the world about it. If you're not getting forward and giving him stuff in the box or getting assists or goal contributions or whatever it is, he's just not interested. I just don't think there's a thought there to be like, I want to bring this guy along and go do it. And again, like we brought up Taifi, Reed Brown is another one where like this kid's built like a tank. He's huge. He would
Alex. He's a Freeman 2.0.
Yeah, he's gonna body professional men at the top level. The problem is I just don't think he's ever gonna get a shot. And as bad as Marin was last year, which I know we're all kind of secretly hoping that he's better this year because he needs to be, because we haven't added to left back at all. So you got to hope that he gets better this year. But my thing is that I hope Oscar has the short hook that if Marin's not it, is Reed Brown in a position to compete right now? And I don't know if we can say that because I don't know that the team has done a good enough job putting him in the right position to be able to compete right now. So if you're not, like to Luke's point, if you're not setting up your youth team in this point, right? Your B team, if you're not setting them up to be ready to make the jump forward, you're failing them. I don't care about score lines there. I don't care if they get smoked 5-0 for most of the games in the season. I want to see these guys progress from game to game, week to week, season to season. I don't care about if they win the MLS Next Pro Championship. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is they're eventually able to contribute to the first team, and then they can obviously fulfill their dreams and do their thing. Because what has Alex Freeman shown all these kids so far this year, right? You can go and start in the academy, go to OCB, go to the main team, and you can get sold and go to your dream of hitting Europe. The problem is the club, to me, this is a generational talent, and the club's not going to do that for everybody, right? And that's the problem right now. So there has to be a solution there to fix that.
There's a callback to this, and it reminds me of this. This was the callback. It reminded me of Richie Larea. When Richie Larea never really got a chance at the first team, but wow, what a player has he turned into. What he is,
right.
He does have a mouth on him. Let's just say that. But he was an OCB player, never really got his shot, and we played him out of position completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we were playing him all sorts of everywhere. Ended up being a right back, and what a player he's turned into. And he was like, I don't know where I think he's at Toronto.
Yeah, he's in Toronto still.
Still. But he's made a career for himself despite not getting the chance that he should have got. And I feel like he's turned into an amazing player. And there's been so many players that I think that we've just missed the mark on. And I feel like we're going to see that same thing with Thomas Williams again, where he's going to flourish as a centre-back because he's got Walker Zimmerman at his side.
No, Walker Zimmerman's not there anymore.
Yeah, he's in Toronto.
Who's he gonna play alongside with?
I forgot who their 2 is now.
Godoy? Is Godoy still there?
No, he's in San Diego.
Godoy. So, but I know. But
whoever it is.
We look at the players that not San Diego, but Nashville has had over the years, and you look at the centre backs that they've had.
Right.
And if I was a centre back going to Nashville, I'd be like, I'm in safe hands.
Oh yeah, and their system,
they've got these players
right
who they've had, and they've got a good judgment of centre backs. And if I was a defender, I'd be buzzing to go there. So
and the thing about Nashville too is they have a coach that, at least my perspective of him from what he did with the U.S. national team for a little bit and what he's done with Nashville so far, is a fantastic coach.
Yeah.
I mean, he, every match we played with against them last year, he took Poppy to the woodshed, in my opinion. And to get back to what your point was to begin with is, I think I agree with you. Poppy's time should have been, and thankfully it wasn't because we got a trophy out of it. Right. Back in 2022, if we had lost to Red Bulls, he was getting fired after that match. If we had lost, and we ended up winning 5-1, which I find funny because you think about how we began the season last year. We were scoring goals left and right.
Yep.
For the first month, and then all of a sudden, right before Poppy's contract is renewed or gets new extended, whatever it was, um, we have 4 straight no draws,
Yeah.
and it's like he, when his feet are put to the fire, he's willing to attack, but then when he attacks, we leak goals, like it's going out of style.
Well, and remember the excuse amongst a lot of people, and I think this was like a rumor that came out, was that he wasn't going to be able to focus on the season if they didn't get his contract situated. And I personally, like, I don't give a crap about that. Figure out how to coach. You're coaching for your job. Like,
Yeah,
like,
if you're a professional coach, if you can't deal with having your contract on the line, which as a professional in anything, when the pressure's the highest is when you're supposed to excel.
right.
Hit the road. We'll find somebody that can excel in that position. Because I've said it multiple times on the main show, the average length of a manager is less than 18 months across the world.
Right.
And he's been here 5 years, and we've gone now, 3 full seasons. 3, 4, 5. Yeah. 3 full seasons without a trophy,
Hmm.
without even a championship match, true championship match. I consider the Eastern Conference Finals. They call them, because it's Americanized. It's the MLS Cup semifinal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't even reached a championship match. Like, we were this close to winning it. The match didn't go our way. And we haven't even made that. Every time we've been right on the brink of that, we faltered in the same way over and over and over and over again. But the pathway, and you guys brought it up. I truly believe that, because you look at the preseason lineups and everything, that Poppy had no consideration coming into the year last year. And you and I went back and forth about it, David, a little bit on X, that
Yeah.
Poppy had little to no consideration of playing Freeman at all, more than
Yeah.
just back up. Oh, we need a goal. Let's put Freeman in. He's going to, be kind of our super sub at the right back type of deal. And he came in and, was outperforming anybody that could even sniff that position.
Right.
And that, that goes to what we've kind of been talking about, is the pathway from academy. There's, the Orlando City B is closer to, which it's still a jump to go from, a U19, U20, U19, U18 level to go to OCB.
Right.
But that jump has to be a little bit bigger. And I feel like it's, a reflection on the state of the soccer in this country at a
Yeah.
youth level. But it's also a state, a reflection of the state of the MLS, where the MLS has continued to get better and better and better by signing these players, and and the reserve teams across the country haven't been able to keep up with that, that growth and level.
Yeah. What was it like? Conservatively, I could probably say 2 or 3 academies are really constantly churning out talent. Like Philadelphia is probably the first one that comes to mind for a lot of people. Red Bulls puts out a lot of players, if people aren't aware of that one. And then Dallas still is able to put out some players and do their thing. Obviously, I think they're a little past their glory days, but for the most part, they still put out those players. That's probably maybe the 3 academies I could point to right now to say they consistently churn out talent and they're able to do it at the right way. But I think really what it comes down to is, if you're a club, especially like Orlando City, who has waxed poetic about wanting to build the academy and wanting to have this direct pipeline like all these other teams have, why are we not looking at Philadelphia more often? Why isn't every other team, the 29 other teams, going to Philadelphia and saying, well, what are they doing here to get their players through the academy? Because again, like I said before, even take the South American example, because Ricardo obviously is very plugged into what goes on in Brazil. Those players are making the jump, and there's a few reasons for that, right? They train almost every day with the first team, whether they're a U20 player or whether they're on a first team contract. The second part of it is they bring an extra traveling contingency of players, even if they're not even going to make the match day squad. They still bring guys with them to travel, to understand what a match day looks like, to understand what the environment is and all that kind of stuff. And then last but not least, they're getting evaluations from everybody on the coaching staff from first team down. They're not just getting evaluations from, here's my U20 coach, they're giving me the feedback, that's it. No, you're getting it from, if your head coach is Tite on the first team, you're getting it from Tite, and then you're getting it from your academy coach and this guy and that guy. So like, why is, no offense, but like, why is it so hard to figure out, especially for somebody like, and again, Ricardo is still new to this in terms of doing it solo, so we got to give him time. But like, if I'm Ricardo, all you got to do is go look in your backyard. Go look in the backyard and say, okay, Brazil's figured it out. Why can't I go and make, and I know the ongoing joke this offseason, and John Rollins likes to make this joke a lot, which I think is kind of funny because we are turning into it. We're a Rio de Orlando, right? We're bringing in all this Brazilian like talent and all these different things, and I'm not against that. There's a lot of talented footballers in Brazil, right? We got a steal for Pedro Leal. He's not going to stay in OCB for very long. I can tell you guys that right now. The kid is incredible. I don't even understand how we were able to touch him and get him to Orlando. But like, and same thing with Nacho Gomez coming out of Velez too. Kid should have never left Argentina, but Velez just didn't have room for him on the first team squad. Those are the kind of ways that you can build out the top end of your OCB roster. But what about the other kids that have been there? Like, you know, Bernardo Rhine, Archan's going to come back this season after he comes back from his injury. Platts is going to come back after his injury. Judelson's going to come back after the knock that he's getting over as well. You've got Tristan, who's going to compete for the starting goalkeeper spot with Rojas that we just signed. So like, there's a lot of talent that we're building in between. We're even bringing in more talent to compete as well. Justin Ellis, we'll see. Sources told myself and a couple of folks at LPO that Justin Ellis is supposed to be signing a homegrown deal. We're not sure yet. We don't know if it's going to get over the line, but he's the closest he's ever been to signing a homegrown deal. But I worry about with that for him, because like, are we going to ruin him? Like, no offense, we've ruined a fair amount of other homegrowns, because he was holding out to go to Europe. That was his goal. He was going to see his OCB contract out, and then he was going to say, see you later, guys, I'm headed to Europe. Like, I'm not doing this. And I don't blame him for that, because we didn't really have a great track record. But now that Freeman has been sold, from what I understand, and the European offers aren't really there for him because he didn't have a baller season last year with OCB, it sounds like he's more amenable to taking a homegrown contract. Great. Would love to see him with the first team. But how often are we going to see him with the first team? And I don't know that it's going to be very often. He's probably going to spend most of the season with OCB again, so it's going to be another homegrown, like Colin Gusky, like Reed Brown, like Caraballo, who are going to spend most of their season probably down with OCB. And it's going to start to get fans to question, well, why sign them to a homegrown deal if they're never going to make the jump up to the first team? It just doesn't make a ton of sense. Now, Gustavo's the only one I think I give a pass to, because the kid's like 16 or 17. He's going to need time, right? And to figure it out. And he's, honestly, to me, he gets bodied a little bit too much. He's not as physical as he needs to be. So he's got to work on that and get bigger and all that kind of stuff. But like, for everybody else, like, time's ticking. Like, I just don't know if you're going to get the opportunities you need to. And that's on the club to figure out where that connection is.
Absolutely. I mean, Caraballo, he looks like he's put on some weight this year too. And
yeah,
photo, stuff I've seen in preseason. But yeah, it's just a gap that Thomas Williams was one of our first, homegrown contracts, and it's like the fact that he didn't get a start against the Rowdies.
Yeah,
kind of sealed where his fate was with this club, and Caraballo had a fantastic game.
Yeah, it was stellar.
Yeah. But I know I'm not saying Caraballo is better than
sure.
Pasalic by any means.
All right.
But you see somebody like him, and I actually wonder, because Caraballo's played it with the U19s, if they're going to put him as more, since we have an abundance of wingers this year, if they're going to kind of try to transfer him into a backup number 10, because that's what he plays with when he's with the U19.
Yeah, they could. I know based on preseason reports, they like Harvey as the next guy behind Ojeda, because he is pretty crafty. I know. I know you plugged my college stuff a couple weeks ago, and I appreciate that. That was one of the things that I put in there, is that Georgia Southern, especially like in his first stop in college, looked at him as a 10. They thought he had the skills and everything. And if you look at his tape from Georgia Southern, he does. I mean, he was a shifty dude, and he's big too. He's like 6'1". I think he's like a buck 70, buck 75, something like that. So he's a big kid. So putting him at the 10 is a little, it looks a little out of place, but he plays a really nice, like, he's not a playmaker 10, but he's a nice, like, 1-2 punch with whatever strikers in front of him. So I could see him playing well with like a Duncan, right? If he had to come in for Ojeda for a game or whatever it is. So I think he's kind of the guy, but then again, it gets back to our sort of original conversation of like, okay, you've backfilled these spots, but now you've blocked your homegrown from getting an opportunity to get on there. Because again, I'd love to see Caraballo get some decent sub minutes for Pasalic on the right-hand side, or when Pasalic starts to do his warm-up matches with Croatia before the World Cup, he's going to miss some time. Is Caraballo going to be the first name off the team sheet that's going to start? I don't think so. I think Poppy would rather put a Tiago or put a Tyrese Spicer or put even a Sukata over Caraballo, which is not great for him. He should get that opportunity to get a start and kind of show the team what he can do. And to me, if he's not working out, yank him at halftime, yank him at 60 minutes, and find somebody who's going to. You can't have a worse season than what Angulo had last season on the left-hand side, and he wasn't a homegrown, right? Yeah. This is a guy we paid $1 million to keep, and we're paying over $500,000 to play every single year. You can't have a worse season with this guy.
Allocation money. He has an allocation money contract. Like,
yeah, like exactly.
One step lower than a designated. That's like the way it's slated.
Right.
Be one step lower than a designated player, and he's not contributing. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you about. About Caraballo and just the reserves in general. But I also feel like Alex is an exception. He was obviously more
generational talent. Yeah.
For the MLS. But when we have these guys like the 16-year-old that we sold,
Granados. Yeah.
It's like, it's not like we sold him to a first division top,
right.
top 5 or 6. We sold him to, what was it, Belgium?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, keep him and see what he can do on the senior team.
Right.
He barely even played on the B team as it is.
Yeah.
See what he can do. And it's like, and we're not asking them to just like put these guys in trial by fire, kind of like they're having to do seemingly default this year.
Yeah.
And because more times than not, that ends poorly because the player's not properly prepared.
For sure. And to be honest with you, John, that's my worry for Taifi to start the season, right? If he's the right back going into the season, listen, I've got a lot of faith in him. I know you guys think pretty highly of him as well, so I'm not speaking out of turn or anything. But like, if he starts a bad 3-game stretch against those first 3 opponents, first of all, you're going to put his confidence in the gutter, right? Number one. And then secondly, you don't have anyone behind him. Like right now, you literally have nobody behind him. Mm-hmm. So what's the play? Like maybe they sign Yearwood to a professional team contract, but he's played well so far. But again, he got a red card in the game against Lexington, and you don't love that. I know he's trying to prove himself and all that, but I mean, it's not great there. So you worry about, what that looks like. Same thing with Nolan Miller. He's had a really solid preseason, and I'm happy for the guy because he had a great career at Michigan. So like, I don't want to take anything away from him. But do you want him to be the third center back off the bench? I don't know that a championship team has him as the third center back off the bench. But to your point of playing the guys, we're in 3 competitions this year, right? We're in Leagues Cup, we're in Open Cup again, and we're in the MLS season / playoffs and all that kind of stuff, right? To me, you've got enough competitions there to give the young kids an opportunity to truly play the young kids. The first match of the U.S. Open Cup should be, let's roll out as many of these homegrowns and young kids that we have with maybe a couple of main guys sprinkled in just to make sure we have some level of consistency and give them a chance to go and prove themselves and see what they can do. Unlike last year with the Rowdies where we played some bench guys, played like 1 or 2 young guys and said, okay, this is good enough and we're done. It just wasn't enough for me. There should have been more there to kind of go and prove themselves, and they're just not given those opportunities. Or for example, if we play a quick stretch, like a Saturday game into a Wednesday game into a Saturday game, could you not maybe on the Wednesday game, if it's against a Western Conference opponent, or if it's, you're traveling a bunch, could you not play one of the kids or a couple of those kids in those spots and see how they do? And again, if they're not working out, go sub them, at halftime or something like that and figure it out. Like, those are options that Poppy has, but he just never wants to pull that card from the deck. And sort of as a last thing on this idea, sources have told me Poppy has done everything not everything, but most things he can do to not play kids this preseason. And to hear that is super concerning. I don't like that at all. What he should be doing in preseason is playing those kids who don't get playing time to see what their skill sets are and what they can provide to you. I don't need to see the starting 10 and a kid because we know what the starting 10 is going to be, right? Unless you're using that kid to try to figure out if, like, let's say it's the kid to replace Alex Freeman, then fine. But, like, I don't need to see the rest of the lineup that way. It doesn't do anything for us. You should be using it as an opportunity to say, okay, which kids are standing out so that I know what to look for in the next couple of weeks. And when the season starts, I know how to pull a guy off the bench or do this or get a spot start or whatever that looks like. Sort of very much what he did with Harvey in the Lexington game. I don't know if either one of you were able to attend or see anything from the Lexington game, but he really just let Harvey run out there for 60 minutes and said, do whatever you can in 60 minutes. And that's the way he should have been with him because you don't know what you have until you put that guy out there. And I get it. Lexington is a level below what MLS is, but they're a solid USL championship squad.
For the kids, it's good for the test for the kids. That's
right.
Yeah.
And it was really good for Nolan Miller, who, again, didn't get any scrimmage time with us, obviously, beforehand. So it was good for him. He settled in. Apparently, he was a very nice partner for Brecalo. I was able to watch most of the first half because somebody sent me a long, video of most of the play from the first half. But, that's the stuff you want to see. Yearwood, again, had a really good half until he got the red card. It was a stupid red card. But, again, he's trying to prove himself. But that's the stuff you should be looking for. But then when they went and played the preseason scrimmage against Fury down in Mexico, which wasn't announced and just randomly popped up out of nowhere. When they went to go play that game, they put 3 young players in the first half, and everybody else was bench options and older players. And then in the second half, they ran out basically the starting 11 with one change, and Harvey played right back for 20 minutes for some reason, and nobody knows why. And I was like, why the heck are you putting this guy at right back to go and figure that out? So it was just a very confusing so far preseason in terms of what this looks like, and our opponents don't get easier. We're playing Cincinnati and Nashville next, which, again, score doesn't matter. I don't care about that in the preseason, but this should be the time that you're using to test these guys out, and Poppy's not even doing that. When you're afforded the time, he's not even using it. So that's why I just don't have a ton of faith that, and some of these kids, like I said, he's going to have to use, but I promise you it's going to be the same 2 or 3 kids he uses all season, and then he's not going to use anybody else in that list, and we're all going to be sitting here going, well, what's the point of having them signed to the first team roster if they're never going to see minutes?
Yeah. I agree. It's getting to a point where you elaborated it and you look, well, Jansen's injured, Schlegel's gone, Brecalo, you just don't know where he's going to play. He could play anywhere, Brecalo, but if we're planning him to play centre back, then we are.
Yeah.
You have to look and you have to say your hands are tied.
Yep.
We are so thin in defense. Your hands are tied. You're gonna have to play these kids eventually, and now is the time. You know.
And my worry too is that and you guys talked about it on the main show, I think, moving Wilder Cartagena fixes a problem, sure, if you move him back a line, but I don't love Wilder Cartagena in the back line. He's fine there. It'll work in a pinch, but to me, he needs to take that 6th spot, because when we're best when Wilder Cartagena is in that 6th spot, because we know Poppy loves a double pivot. He's going to run a double pivot until he dies. It's just literally the formation he's going to run. What I'm hoping out of Poppy this year, and I know this is a hope and a prayer because we don't normally see it from him, is I want him to run a double pivot, but with a 6 and an 8, not with double 6s. But we know he's going to default to try to play with double 6s, and he might have to do it to protect the back line if we don't get these dudes in time, which I don't love because I want to see, because personally I think Brian Ojeda is a better 8. I think Atuesta, when he's asked to be an 8, is a better 8. He's not a 6, right?
No,
both of those guys are better if they're given the free reign to be box to box and do those things. And I think Brian Ojeda is a step above what Atuesta gives. And that's not an insult to Atuesta. It's just how I feel about their play and what he was able to give RSL the last season and a half, 2 seasons or whatever it is. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think Poppy, what he's going to do is he's going to place Wilder Cartagena there, and then he's either going to put one of Brian or Atuesta next to him and say, You're playing as sixes as well. We're going to play with double sixes. Or he's going to do something crazy, which again, I think this is super far-fetched, but put somebody like Luis Otavio there next to him and be like, I just want you guys to defend. But we know he's not going to play the kid, so I really doubt Otavio is going to get on the field and get that opportunity. And that was the guy going into all this that I was highest on before Iago, because Luis Otavio can ball. This kid knows how to break up the game. He knows how to get involved. The only issue I ever saw with him with Internacional was he just got caught between two minds. He just mentally, he's not 100% there yet, but that's fine. He's 19 years old. Like, you don't expect to have it all yet.
And and this was reading your report, the blog you did on him.
Yeah.
It was more on the attack that he was caught between two minds.
Yes.
The defensive side.
Yeah, the defensive side, he knew how to do it. It's just like, and again, we press, so maybe it's a little easier because maybe the conversation is just, hey, we're going to counter press here, or we're going to, this is the pressing cue for this, or that's the pressing cue for that. And maybe it makes it easier for him and simplifies it a little bit. But there was a lot of times, and the one thing I did like, and I put in that same report, was he was constantly talking to the coaching staff, trying to understand where he needed to be plugged in. Now, do I think Poppy's a coach that's going to do that with him the entire game? Not a chance. But if he's sitting next to somebody like Wilder Cartagena will do that for him. He'll tell him, hey, be here, I'm going to go there. Be there, I'm going to go there. So it'll be interesting to see, but again, I don't think that's the best way for this team to play. And like I said before, I don't want to see Cartagena moved back a line. I know he can play there, that's fine, but that's not his best position. I want to stop playing players out of their best position. Championship teams play their best players in their best position. So stop with this whole moving lines BS and all this kind of stuff. I know the ongoing joke too, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, is which one is our most athletic midfielder they're going to move to right back. It's a funny joke, but I'm over it because it's like, go out and get a right back. Yeah. Stop with the foolishness of trying to like move all these dudes to right back. Thor Hulsen was a serviceable right back, but he's not a right back. No. So it's just infuriating.
Times where he would get, if he had to go up against a striker where he just got absolutely bullied off the ball.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And I mean, yeah, he was serviceable. I loved him in the attack. I thought, I told Luke when we were at the season ticket member preseason match last year, I said this right side, and this was without expecting Freeman to do what he did.
Sure.
I said this right side could be a lot of fun to watch this year with Dagger Dan and then
for sure
Kastelic, because of how aggressive they are on the attack. And yeah, but like you said, to me, fullbacks more than almost any other position on the field are a dime a dozen. I mean, we won a U.S. Open Cup with Ruan as our starting right back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, they're almost a dime a dozen. And when you find a good one, not even a great one like Freeman was,
right?
A good one, it could change the whole team. But in the grand scheme of things, they're cornered into a side that it's going to, if the ball's on the opposite side, it's going to take, 3 passes for them to get the ball generally.
Right.
So luckily with somebody like Taifi, like we said earlier, he definitely has the ceiling to get to it. It's just how well has the club done to prepare him to, be in that position to start and play 80, 90 minutes a match. At this point, it's 90 minutes a match every match because there's nobody to replace him.
Yeah. Well, I think too, honestly, and I said this on LPO tonight, and Poppy won't do this because he won't change his formation, but I think this team, if they got the depth for it, would be prime for a 3-back set with your your wingers on the side, and then because then you're getting the best out of your midfield in the middle of the park. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's where your talent is on this team. It's the midfield and your wingers that are the talent that you can bring in. And somebody like Spicer can play wing back. He did for Toronto. He did in his college career. People like, I'm sure Angulo with enough training can be a proper wing back and be able to do what he needs to do on that side. The right side is a little more questionable. I don't know that I want Paslic defending as much on that right-hand side, but you can make changes to the formation to say maybe he doesn't need to come back as far and somebody covers for him. But I think this team is primed for that. The problem is there's no depth there to go do it. So even if, like, for example, I said on LPO, even if you move like Marin inside in a back 3, because I think Marin could probably play the left side of a back 3 if you train him up a little bit and stuff like that. And he's a bigger dude, so I think he can figure it out. But even if you put him on the left side of it, you still don't have enough people because that's only Marin, Brekalo, and then you assume Iago comes in, right? Maybe you assume Nolan Miller signs a first team contract. That's 4. You're still short a bunch of people. Janssen eventually will get healthy, hopefully. So he'll get healthy. So that gives you 5. I still feel like maybe you're a body short and like maybe you try to ask somebody like Reed Brown to see if he can play in a back 3 and maybe that works for him. But to me, that puts the best players on the field because then you're putting Wilder obviously at the 6th spot. He plays the roaming 6. He goes where he needs to go. He wrecks the game the way he normally wrecks the game, right? And then you have an opportunity to put not only Brian Ojeda on the field, but also Astuesta on the field at the same time. And those guys can just cook behind Ojeda, and Ojeda can, Martin Ojeda can do whatever he needs to do to get in positions to score goals, right? And then as far as I'm concerned, I think it's going to be Angulo because it's Poppy, but I would put somebody who's more direct, like a Tyrese Spicer when they go forward, or a Tiago, who would be able to get forward and just cause havoc on that side. And when you defend, you're defending with really 6 or 7 guys. And when you're going forward, you're bringing almost everybody forward with you, sans your 3 center backs and potentially Cartagena, depending on where you want Cartagena to sit. But again, as we get back to our original conversation, Poppy's not going to do that. He's not going to think about the game that way or change it that way. And I know a lot of people, I've argued with a lot of people online this offseason about that. They're like, oh, well, we did play a back 3. No, we didn't. When we went forward, we were in what looked like a back 3 because we let Freeman just go wherever he wanted to go, and Brekalo would pinch inside and defend for us, and he wouldn't really go forward. That's not a back 3. We were still starting in the base of a 4-2-3-1. We just let Freeman do what he wanted to because he's a freak athlete and he was going to go and make chances for us. This team right now doesn't have that same freak athlete on the team to go do that. So you can play a little bit more defensive or play a little bit differently than what you're going to do, but you're losing a number in attack that this team didn't have before. And I think that's why the double pivot and doing a 6 and an 8 becomes more important, because you're going to need the extra body because you're losing the body from whoever it's going to be. That's not to say the fullbacks every once in a while won't bomb forward. That's not to say Marin might not get forward, or Taifi might not get forward, or whoever it is on the right side. But they're not an Alex Freeman. We know that. So, maybe Taifi in time, but he's not Alex Freeman now. And he's never going to be the size of Alex Freeman, right? So you're not going to get that benefit. So I don't know. I just would love to see him to be more open about his formation, his understanding of the game. I'd like him to get after the game. He talks about being a protagonist all the time. To me, it's just fluff at this point. If you're going to be one, go after the game. Go win the game. And sort of like Luke said earlier, if you're at home, you should be going to the jugular every single time you're at home. You should be putting up 4, 5, 6 goals on your opponent. I don't care if you let 2 in. I don't care if you let whatever in. If we're outscoring them by a lot, great. And then when you go on the road, go play your defensive, pragmatic, let's go steal a goal and bunker back or whatever, right? Those are the games you should be bunkering in a tough environment like NYCFC, or if you're going to Atlanta, or if you're going down to Miami, like go do those. That's where you're supposed to play that game.
You win your games. That's where you play that pragmatic style of play. The one where you get a goal and sit back.
Right.
You play that away from home. You don't play that at home. You want to go out and you want to entertain. You want to go out and you want to play the football, play attacking football, score goals. You might concede 2, but you're scoring 5 or 6 against somebody.
Right.
You're in the opponent's half. I should not be seeing the game, right, and my goalkeeper get man of the match because he's made 11 saves. He's made 11 saves. My goalkeeper should not be making any saves. Or if he does, it's a great save because it's every once in a while. That's when I should see my goalkeeper getting man of the match, when he saved a penalty.
Right.
A penalty to keep us in the game, or a penalty to, make us win 1-0. That is when your goalkeeper gets man of the match, not 11 saves. Right. I remember back in the day when Joe Bendick always used to get save of the week. And the reason he used to get save of the week was because we didn't have a defense.
And he got peppered,
why we got save of the week every single time.
Right.
And that was the argument was, if your goalkeeper's doing nothing, you're doing a good job. So, when it comes to that, I think Otavio again is too young. I feel like you never know. He could break onto the scene. He could.
Yeah.
Especially with our two centre backs. I mean, central defensive midfield players. You
Yeah.
just never know. Two of them are, the two are really risky.
Well, it depends. I think it depends on how fit Wilder is. Like, if Wilder's fit to play, I don't know, 30 games this season, then yeah, you're probably not seeing a lot of Otavio. But if they don't want to risk it, and let's say, I know Cartagena's I think he's on a 1+1 now or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, like, if you don't want to risk it, maybe you only give him 25 games and we're like, hey, we don't want to push you until we get to the playoffs. And then maybe somebody like because Otavio, I feel like, would be the next one on the bench. That's not a damning thing to like Gusky or anything like that. I like Colin Gusky. I think he's a good player. I just don't know that he's at the level that Otavio is. Otavio was
a lot of money for him.
Well, yeah, and Otavio was putting in serious minutes with Internacional and helped them save them from relegation, right? So I mean, like, he was a key part of what they were doing in Brazil. So I think he's got to step there. But even if he's got to start the year with OCB, he's going to be the best central midfield defender you're going to see in MLX Next Pro. There's no doubt about that.
Him and Gusky cooking as a 6 and 8 on OCB, that'll be.
Yeah, and they've got Heighton now and stuff too. So like that team's going to cook. But like the interesting thing is that like I just don't know, and nobody's asked, and that's kind of the next kind of part that I'm at, is that we've only had the one press conference where really any questions were asked so far, and then I know the team kind of ran away to Mexico, and then that's kind of been it so far for the season. But like the first thing, and I brought this up to some folks on social media and the LPO guys, like, can we not talk to the team and find out what Oscar even thinks about these young guys? I don't even know what Oscar thinks about any of the U22s we brought in so far this season. I don't know what Oscar thinks about any of the draft picks that we've had in this season. He's literally not made a single comment about any of them. And he wasn't asked it in the first training, and that's fine. We were just getting started and back to it and all that kind of stuff and whatever. But like, is somebody going to ask? Like, are we going to get the question asked? Because I want to know if Oscar thinks a certain way about somebody, because if he's more positive about a certain player or a group of players, we might see them more often, right? If he's more keen on them. But if he comes out and he's like, yeah, they're fine, they're a part of our team, they are what they are, the OCB kids, they've been good, blah, 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 blah. To me, that says, okay, he's probably not going to play him. He's probably not even looking at him, right? And things like that. So that's where I think the next step needs to be, is that like, we know the boys are back in town, so maybe we'll get an opportunity for the media to be there, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it's going to be. But like, can we ask those questions? Because I want to find out what Poppy's thinking. Because I'm a bit convinced right now that Ricardo is building the team that he wants with little input from Oscar Pareja. And I'm not saying completely none, but I think there is a minuscule amount of input from Oscar at this point in terms of what this team's going to look like. I think Ricardo's going into this and saying, this is the team I'm building, figure it out. And I think that's honestly, for a lot of us, that shouldn't be shocking, because again, if he, like we've said in the beginning, a lot of us thought he was gone after the way last season went. You weren't going to get your team this year. There was no way you were going to walk into this and be like, I'm going to get my team and blah, 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 blah. Not a chance. So I think this is sort of Ricardo saying, you're going to get what you get. You got to make it work. And if you don't, the door's over there. We'll figure out something that we need to do to make this work. And like I said, the market's going to be flush with managers in the middle of the year after the World Cup is done. And if Orlando City want to also go land a big fish, which we think the DP is not going to get addressed until the summer either, which I'm still 50-50 on whether I want that to happen or not. I think I'm more
giving it to him. I don't think they're going to give him that DP slot.
Yeah.
I think he's already going to be gone by the time. And they're going to give that new DP slot to the new manager who's going to come in eventually.
And I don't blame them for it, because the market will be better in the summer. There's no argument about that. The problem is, I just don't know if this team has enough right now to sustain them through the summer, because you don't want to be too far behind all of it by the time you get to the summer window. Because again, to me, if he's not in a playoff position by the summer, he's got to go. Like that's how I feel about it. If he has not put this team, if they're not, I'll say this, if they're not within striking distance, like 1 point or 2 points to the line, he's got to be out of here. Like if we're in the cellar in the East getting to the break, he's got to go. And then at that point, you need to, it's going to, and unfortunately at that point too, it's going to be more difficult to convince a high profile DP to come in, because they're going to look at the table and go, no, you guys are shit. Like, I don't want to come here and do all that kind of stuff. I've got to go and build other stuff. Like Richarlison, I know, is the rumor that keeps popping up, and what that looks like. I'm not the biggest Richarlison fan, so for me, it's whatever. But again, like, what player is going to look at that and go, yeah, bring me on. Sure, you guys are 12th right now in the East, but we can figure it out and make our way through it.
There's
Probably
only a few
not.
players I can think of who are like that, and one of them we had, and unfortunately, Nani is a guy who is like that. A guy who's like, well, I'm that guy who can take this team to another level.
Right.
And he believes in himself. But there's not many players like Nani on this planet.
Yeah, and I don't even think Alua is going to do that for you either. Like, I think Alua is a piece you add to be like, I have these pieces around him. Here's the piece to really like put the icing on the cake or give us X amount of goals that we're going to get and all that kind of stuff. To your point, Luke, there's just not a lot of guys out there that are going to go and change what that looks like. And to be honest with you, I can't even think of a name off the top of my head that would do that. I've been more so in the camp, and I've made this abundantly clear on Reddit and on LPO. I mean, listen, if that guy comes available and you find that guy, sure, whatever, fine. At this point, I'm all about talent and bringing a different look. So, like, I've been on the camp of, like, I know people don't like him, but Memphis Depay knows how to score goals and he gets under people's skin. And, like, the guy's not happy at Corinthians. He's out of contract in the summer. Like, that's a guy you can get for cheap. He's going to change the way you play the game. He's going to be annoying as all hell, but it doesn't matter because your team's going to play with a bit of a bite to it. The other guy that I've been on for a long time, because I don't think MLS does enough business of buying from Liga MX and bringing into the league, is I've been a huge Alexis Vega fan for years and years and years. That guy changes games. He's going to come in here and change games. And so to me, as far as I'm concerned, like you guys have said, it's a moonshot to try to find the guy that's going to not only be the best, like, learning fit and teacher fit and captain fit and skill fit, right? You want to try to check all those boxes if you can. I just don't know that it's, there isn't a name out there right now where I'm like, that's the guy I would bring into Orlando City, and we have a legitimate shot to bring him in the door in the summer and try to make that happen.
That's another thing to address as well, unfortunately, is we're down a captain.
Yeah.
We don't have a captain. I look at our team, unfortunately, and Janssen is the only one who's remotely anything like a captain, and he is a captain. He is the captain of this team.
Sure.
But with him gone, who is leading that dressing room?
Well, Ojeda and Cartagena have been wearing the band during the scrimmages, so I think that kind of tells you where they're at.
Comes to, like, he portrays himself as kind of like a quiet character.
He is, really, he is
like an outgoing. Who's that guy that when you're 2-0 down is going to grab you and give you a good talking to and get the result that's needed?
Yeah,
I don't see anyone. There's not really that outstanding guy. Maybe Cartagena a little bit, because Cartagena can definitely do that.
I think, well, the other guy that, and again, we're not sure about because he played left back all last season. I think Brekalo could be that guy.
Yeah.
My problem is that we played him out of position all season last season. So now you're hoping that he can adjust back, which I'm sure he will, but there might be some learning curve there. But also, he's not South American, and that's a huge disservice for him, right? On a team that's very much now South American and built on the whole identity of having that, like, sort of extra bite and that extra piece to you and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know how good his Spanish is. I don't know if he's got any Portuguese under his belt or anything like that. So, like, I don't know how he's going to lead men. I mean, maybe he still can, but, like, that's a guy that I look at because I know before he came over, I looked at a lot of his time at Viking and a couple of the other stops that he had before, and, like, he was the guy. Like, I mean, they've got the whole song about him being the Slovenian king and all that other junk. Like, he led that team, but that was a different circumstance, right? A different time and all that. So
there's one thing we know about Scandinavians, right? No matter where, Eastern Europeans, they have got quality. Quality is in their DNA. Look at Janssen, look at Brekalo, look at Pasalic.
Yeah,
quality.
Well, that's who I was going to say as captain, even though he's only been on the squad for a year. Is Pasalic? We've seen him do it in matches where he's gotten on guys before, and I feel like part of Freeman's success was attributed to Pasalic because
for sure.
He and Pasalic has, we always talk about a player that's been at a top club. He was at Dortmund. Hate on the Bundesliga, whatever you want. Dortmund was in a Champions League final a couple of years ago.
Right.
one of the even though it was, I think, a 3-1 loss to Madrid, one of the most enjoyable halves of soccer I ever saw before I left and went to the brewery with Lions Den. But he's somebody that I feel like could take the captain's armband. And Cartagena is also somebody that I feel like, but that's all depending on his fitness. Like David said earlier, is he going to come out and play, 85 minutes right off the bat of the season? He seems like he could. Yeah. I know he was training really hard, late last season, and looks like he's in good shape. But there's a difference between looking like good shape and actually being in match fitness. So that's up in the air with Cartagena. But then you said something interesting, David, that I was going to say and then kind of let it go about where things after the Galaxy match kind of went awry and Poppy couldn't rally the troops. Where was our captain? We learned at the show through various sources. I don't know if you heard anything, but about the kind of split that there was in the locker room last season.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've always had said something about, somebody being a part of Poppy's boys. Mm. And I feel like that Janssen was kind of on the outside of the of a group of guys that really, led the team astray. Those guys will remain nameless for right now.
Sure.
Because I'm sure we all have our own opinions on who it was, but I feel like Janssen probably felt like his voice, if he did say something, was just going to fall on deaf ears and make that split, even more than if he just kept his mouth shut. And hopefully these guys, hopefully they can figure it out. And at least the split isn't, it's a small, crevice instead of a canyon type deal. I feel like that had to do with it, as well, which is also why I would be a little bit against Brekalo, having the captain's armband as well. And then, to go along with that, Pasalic, because you never quite know how that chemistry, off the field is with somebody that's from, the complete opposite side of the world.
Yeah, and I think there's the possibility this year of there being sort of 3 divisions too. I don't think it's just going to be the like last year was like the group of South Americans, which again we won't go into names about because I've heard names as well. But now it's sort of like there's the division amongst the South Americans where there's the Argentines, the Colombians, and things like that. But then there's that whole Brazilian section that we're getting now, of these Brazilian guys. You've got this, the Scandinavians, Eastern Europeans that are on this team now, and sort of the small group that they make up. Then you have all the American guys or Canadian guys that have, that are around, and that's going to be a different section. So whoever the captain is, because again, I don't think it can be, it'll be Janssen until the club makes an announcement otherwise, but when Janssen's not on the field, it's super important to have that next guy who's up. And I don't know if you guys were able to catch sort of my update today on the show for LPO, but like sources have told me specifically, Janssen's injury isn't a short time. He's going to be out for a while. Unfortunately, I don't know this for sure, so I don't want to put too much out there conjecture wise, but like, I think it has something to do potentially with his surgery that he had a couple years ago where he had that stress fracture in his right foot. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is a lower right body injury. So that's concerning. That recovery time is anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks for first break. It's 12 to 16 weeks for a second break. So with surgery, so like, I don't know what that looks like, but to me, what that screams is you've got to have a backup captain ready to go and somebody who's going to lead these guys to something this year, right? And I don't know what that something is. I'll be honest with you, going into the season, I'm not the most optimistic guy about where this team can finish. I don't know that we have enough. Like Leagues Cup last year was again sort of lightning in a bottle, like our Eastern Conference Finals appearance a couple years ago. I think we struck gold being able to get out because it's only 4 teams out of each side, 4 Liga MX teams and 4 MLS teams. We had a heck of a game against Necaxa. I don't want to take that away from us, but we had a heck of a game against them, which obviously put us into the next round. And then we beat a very difficult Toluca side to make it, to against Miami. But like, can we do that again this year? I don't know. Like, I don't know if this team has it to make that run again. I think our easiest potential for a cup is probably US Open Cup. But again, it's going to have to be interwoven between all the rest of the schedule that we already have. So, like, how do we navigate that? And what does that look like? And right now, as we've talked about, we don't have the depth. So, like, where are you going to go and run out? Like, even if you wanted to run out the kids, you don't have enough young kids or bench guys to go and run out the first game or 2 games of the US Open Cup, because we only have, 21 players in the roster, 22 players in the roster. So, like, what are you going to do? You're going to have to do a bunch of short-term call-ups from OCB and hope you can fill out the numbers?
What we usually do. That's what we've done.
So, like,
I mean, people think this past May, when the entire month we played Saturday, Wednesday,
right,
was, the end of the month was rough.
Yeah.
Just wait until this year if we win a game or 2 in the U.S. Open Cup, and then we have that. Because, you said Jansson's out 12 to 16 weeks. If
he is, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pretty sure about 12 weeks and 2 days is our last match before the World Cup break.
Right.
Which is essentially the half season mark, the half of the season's over marker.
Right.
And, and it's not looking good. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah.
Anybody that says it is looking good, I'd love to hear them out, because I don't understand how you can look at this team and say, yeah, we're good.
We're ready.
When we've seen the transfers other teams have brought in. And
everyone getting stronger around us, right? Yeah. Nashville got even better than they already were last season. Mm-hmm. DC, I'm not 100% convinced that DC is back, but they've made progress to move in the right direction. Yeah. Montreal has made progress to move in the right direction. Toronto has made progress to move in the right direction, right? So there's all teams that are doing that. Miami is building some super whatever the heck team you want to call that down south to try to figure it out. I still don't think they have great depth, so I think if anyone gets hurt amongst some of those lines, they're screwed as far as I'm concerned, but that different subject for a different time.
You can almost guarantee that Atlanta will also be back.
Yeah, and you would imagine Tata's going to be able to figure out how to piece these dudes together and at least make them a competitive squad as he starts to continue to rebuild, whatever that team's going to be. So again, the way I look at it is I'm optimistic in the moves we've made, because that's where I'm truly at. I like a lot of the moves that we've made already. I'm a big Thiago and Otavio guy. Iago is probably my favorite out of the 3. This kid's going to be nasty. When you see him break some dude's nose, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. This kid is huge and he plays physical and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. And I like the additions of getting Brian Ojeda in the door. I thought that deal was good business for us within the league. I think Crépeau is a serviceable MLS goalkeeper. He's not maybe necessarily going to raise your level, but he's a good sort of consolation prize if you don't want to run with Otero, which I'm not sure how the team feels about it, because we've been seeing Crépeau start and then we've been seeing Otero start, and I'm not even sure where they're at with that. We know Poppy's high on Otero, but who knows? But again,
a young guy, because he's only 21 or 22.
Right. So you like some of these additions. The club really likes the draft pick in Harvey, because they signed him literally a week after he got drafted. So they like him as well. That's all fine and good, and we've done all that there. But when you look at the whole the whole puzzle together, you're just not convinced when you're up against some of the teams in the East. Do I think we're going to be bottom of the barrel spoon folks? No, I don't think we're that bad. I don't think this team is that terrible, unless all the wheels fall off and then there's nothing there. But I would say right now we're probably lucky if we're play-in game material, right? Like, I think that's kind of where we're at right now. We're hugging that line of what that looks like, and to me, that's not good enough. Like, you have to be better than that. And my whole goal is that if you're going to save the DP spot for the summer, which again, okay, I'll let Ricardo take that opportunity to go do that. That piece should be the piece that says that's taking you from a solid playoff team to an MLS Cup contender, not from a maybe we make the playoffs to, okay, we'll solidly get in, but we don't know how far we're going to get. That's the level we're talking about here. That's where it needs to be. And the other thing that people don't want to talk about is if Pasalic balls out at the World Cup, because we know he's probably going to get called up for Croatia, he might not be long for Orlando City either. So then Orlando City's going to have to go back to the drawing board and bring in another attacker to also go with the spot that they're already going to have open. And like, that's not something people are talking about right now. And that's an honest concern, because remember, Pasalic had problems. There was that whole visit with Poppy and Perlman where they went out to go see him at the Croatia camp. after the season had ended, there was already writing on the wall that he might have been looking for a way out. So
yeah, according to our sources, and it sounds like the same with yours.
yeah,
We, the Pesic was trying to find his way out. One of the reports we heard was partly due to the strength and conditioning coach, which I found ironic. We got that report, and then not even a month later that he was he left mutually left the club.
Yeah.
Which is something to be seen. But yeah, I think if Pasalic balls out, he's gone.
Yep.
Which I think worst case, what I was gonna say with the first half of the season, and you said it with the bottom falling out. I look at what we did after a controversial loss to Miami in a semifinal.
Yeah.
And then the wheels started to fall off in the consolation match, and Poppy couldn't regain the team. We have a decent amount of the same players on the team.
Right.
I wonder if we go through a stretch to start the season where we go, 3, 4, 5 matches without a victory, which I hate saying, which means we wouldn't beat Miami at home.
Right.
But we go 3, 4, 5 matches without a victory, and then all of a sudden the team just loses interest in hearing what Poppy says, and we're sitting there in June with, 2 wins. I think that's kind of worst case scenario, but at the same time, I also think best case scenario, we maybe are in like 7th, at best 7th spot.
Right.
Which, isn't really much of a best case, worst case. And I honestly don't think that it'll be one of those that, from what I've heard, Ricardo will let it get to June, and Fabian kind of reaffirmed that tonight.
Sure. Yeah.
Where I think if he goes through the month of March and we're not sitting right at or close to a 500 mark, that that Poppy will be let go, because I really feel like that Ricardo was told he couldn't let Poppy go because he still had 2 years on his contract. I mean, we look at the whole saga with Muriel and buying him out, and that was only over a season.
Yeah.
You have a manager that still has 2 years left.
Yeah.
The
Muzi left us that parting gift. I put the sole blame on him for trying to get that done.
Looking out for his buddy.
Yeah. And it's a great point, John, because I think it really, the other thing that Ricardo has to think about is you don't want to tie yourself to this guy, right? Like, I understand he's not your coach, and I always feel like this with a lot of the teams that I follow. And listen, as somebody who grew up in Clearwater, I followed a lot of bad professional teams for a lot of my life and whatnot. Thank God I never became a Rowdies fan or anything. But what I will say is, like, the GM normally gets an opportunity to bring their guy in, right, at some point during the process. And I think that's where, when you're Ricardo, you can't let this guy go on for too long, because then he becomes your guy if you keep giving him more and more leash to try to figure out what he's going to go do. Obviously, the ownership would love if Poppy came out of the gate and rattled off 6 wins in a row and we're flying going into the first month and a half of the season. But if he's not, if he's on the other side, if he's got 6 losses and combined draws, you have to start asking questions. Like, you have to start making those decisions. And per sources, I kind of already know who the team would maybe necessarily tap to be an interim head coach. I think it might be obvious for people that might have been following the team for a while of who that might be. But I can tell you right now, we all know Ricardo's got a short list of managers when the time comes. I with how much planning this guy has done throughout the entire process, because that is the one thing I will definitely give Ricardo. He's a planner and he's got his lists. I'm not doubting that he doesn't have what he has there. What he has to prove to us, of course, at this point is he getting good deals? And secondly, can he close the deals he needs to close? The Coronel thing, I know it was more so Coronel's fault and his agent's fault, but it's a little bit of a black eye on Ricardo to start the offseason, right? You thought you had a guy done, you verbally agreed, and then he ditches town and goes to a team in Sao Paulo. You got to put the signature on the line. That's what should have happened, right? But again, GMs go through that. I'm not gonna hit the guy too hard for it or whatever it is. But I'm sure he's learned that lesson, right? He's not going to do that again. There's no way, right? It's the same thing from what I heard about Dusan, with Jaganalia and everything like that. We were very careful about don't sign this guy on the line until we do our final medical with him and make sure everything checks out. And sure enough, he got a knock the day before he was supposed to do his final medical. And the club said, no, ain't no way. We're not touching this dude. And that's exactly the mentality you should have had going into it. They're going to do the same thing with Iago. As much trust as Ricardo has in Flamengo and their organization and all that kind of stuff, they're going to do their due diligence before they sign off on this guy and say, yeah, this deal's going to go through and we're going to do what we need to do here. But again, to your original point, you can't let Oscar ride for too long, because then again, like I said, he becomes your guy. And also, you can't watch another team lose and limp into what's going to be a transformative 2027. Because to me, I've said this all along, even before my LPO days, and I said this on Twitter when the offseason started, is Oscar Pareja the guy you want at the helm when you're about to navigate 3 seasons back to back to back? My answer to me personally is no. He's not the guy I want to navigate the 3 different seasons, because I know whatever team wins the silly season is going to have an asterisk next to their name. It's the same thing as the MLS's back tournament and all that kind of stuff and whatever. But I still want to win it. I don't care if there's an asterisk. I still want to go into the silly season and win the damn thing. And then the first season, when we flip over to the new schedule, I want to go in and I want to win the damn thing. Because then everyone's going to remember the team that won those specific events that happened, right? But you got to go and do it. You got to have the right manager to do it. And again, as much as I would love Poppy to figure it out, the 5 years has not shown us that he's going to. That he's going to be flexible enough to figure it out. And again, like Fabian said on your main show tonight, we're in MLS 5.0 and he's still in MLS 2.0, right? I just don't think he's made it out of what that looks like, and he still thinks
I think he's at 2.0.
Well, I don't think he's an OG. He's not an OG coach from like when MLS started. So
I don't know what you define as 2.0, but
post Beckham, really.
Yeah, I would say when the DP era started. Yeah.
I'm on about like 3 point. Again, I'm young, so I'm on about like 3.5 probably. So
I gotcha.
I'm on about, he's still probably not even at the Atlanta United level when Miguel Almiron and
no, that's well into 3.0, almost 4.0.
Yeah,
quickly thinking.
Yeah,
because I feel like when we came in the league, that was kind of transitioning from 2.0 to 3.0.
Agreed.
With that, the way they started expanding.
Yeah, but I don't even think we're at that level yet, because like they ran the league. That was like a new format where all these South American players, a successful model for South American players came over, and it was kind of a transition from the model of the get the star player.
Right.
Ironically, it was get the star, a transition away. Now we're back.
Right.
Except they're like world class top players instead.
The difference is you're not getting a 34-year-old Beckham, you're getting a 28-year-old Beckham, to compare.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Right. Well, it's like NYCFC, right? They kind of gave it a bad look because they brought in like Pirlo and David Villa, and they were all, for the most part, kind of over. I mean, we brought the same thing in. Kaká didn't perform all that well for us on the field, but he was a great figurehead and steward for the club.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's what we needed at the time. But again, like, if he's so far back in, this MLS history at this point, you have to look at it and say, okay, enough's enough. And I think that's why, and a lot of people have had this issue of like, no, if we're going to get rid of this guy, we need to bring in a coach that understands MLS. I don't agree with that anymore. I think MLS, because of its progression and where it's at this point, you don't need to bring in an MLS manager to navigate the season. What you need is a manager who knows how to win, develop players, understand how to connect with players, and then you need a front office that helps that manager navigate what the league is going to be like. What my perfect world is, go out and get your best manager that you want to go get, however Ricardo defines that. And again, I don't know how he defines it. I've never asked him, so who knows? I don't think anyone's maybe asked him what manager he's looking at. But for example, let's use somebody that he knows well and that's been linked to Orlando before. Let's say somebody like Tite decides to come to Orlando and run the team, right? All you need to do is put somebody on his coaching staff that has MLS experience. That's all you need to do at that point, because then you fix all the problems of navigating MLS, because this guy's going to help you go and navigate them. And then obviously Ricardo, as the sort of steward of the front office, can come in as well and say, okay, this is how the season works. This is how our salary cap works. This is how all these things work or whatever. I'll help you navigate it and what it looks like. I hate the excuse of you got to bring a manager who's used to MLS. BS. There's so many managers that have come over now and haven't needed to do that and understand that and have been successful, and that aren't Miami. So like there, it's possible in the way that it works. It's just,
Well,
I don't want to
even
see.
to a more extensive point, David, you could almost attract a manager from outside of the league by going, listen, you come here, you're not going to have to worry about the salary cap because as a GM, that's my responsibility.
Right.
You're not going to have to worry about navigating a season because that's your assistants and the, staff's responsibility.
Right.
I'll consult you when I have, with what type of player you need in the off season, and we'll go that way. All you have to worry about is putting a winning product on the field and maintaining that ship to winning a trophy. To
Right.
me, as a coach, from what the MLS model has been, where the coaches are well-rounded in MLS and all of that, bring in somebody that knows nothing and their job is just to win matches.
Yeah.
And I know that's more on Ricardo's plate. He has to hire, I haven't even heard that we've hired him and he's hired an assistant or the club's hired an assistant for him.
Right.
You'd probably have to hire a couple assistants, but to me, that is the way to attract somebody like a Tite. Because I don't know if you're aware, but several years ago, he was on if Oscar, when the whole Poppy in Poppy out thing exploded when we first started the show and everything.
Yeah.
Tite was everything but pencil on the dotted line because they were waiting for Poppy to be
I heard that. Yeah.
And then he went, and then he went to Brazil.
Right.
So he already has interest in this team.
Right.
And, I feel like coming from the cauldron that is soccer in South America because of how high the pressure is.
Right.
One advantage that we have here in the States is, yes, you have, guys like us that take it seriously and have a very, standard rest of the world standard approach to the sport.
Right.
And to our club. But for the most part, and one thing that I'm sure annoys Luke and I'm sure David annoys you, is how I'll say lackadaisical most of the fan base is.
Yeah.
And that's, even Kaká said, he's like, I love playing here because nobody knows who I am. I can go to the grocery store and, everybody's just like, oh, there's this Brazilian guy here.
Right.
And nobody knows who he is, and that's to me right now a huge advantage of, being able to attract talent. Because I know as with working in the golf industry and dealing with celebrities and knowing celebrities, that's one thing that they hate is when they go to a place and one person recognizes you. Because once one person recognizes you, everybody else is like, who is that? And then they're on their phone searching
right.
and everything. And
right.
and it becomes, not necessarily like a Cristiano Ronaldo going to the center of Madrid, juggling a soccer ball with his.
Even like Ronaldo's and Messi's. Like Messi went to the store. He probably couldn't even enter a store. That's probably the first time he's entered a store in the first time in 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's how much people are so unaware of what's going on.
Yeah, and it's a benefit, like John was saying, it's a benefit on both sides, right? For player and for manager. And I think, and again, I think that's why the door should be wide open. And I think for somebody like Orlando, especially if we're not at a decent spot in the summer, you should be calling every single coach that's going to become available after the World Cup and being like, hey, what's your future look like? Like, I'd be interested to know. Like, I know, Pochettino's already being connected back to clubs in England and stuff like that about potentially getting some of the big manager jobs there. I'm not saying he's the answer, but I'm just saying as an example, like those coaches are going to become available and people are going to be looking. But the question is, why not MLS? Like, why couldn't you tell one of these guys to be like, hey, your leash is going to be longer here. You're not going to get mobbed anywhere you go over here. We're going to take care of all the BS MLS roster rules and junk. You don't got to worry about that. We'll figure that out for you. We'll surround you by the people we need to surround you with. All the training facilities across MLS are for the most part improving, right? Things are getting better. Ours is on the list to do that after the Wilfs do all their development mumbo jumbo that they're doing with Heritage and all that kind of stuff. So with all of that, it's like, it shouldn't be difficult for Ricardo to even if you don't get one of those national team managers, can't he go down to Brazil and say, maybe you're not going to get Flamengo's manager, or maybe you're not going to get, Palmeiras' manager, but You could get Fluminense's manager, or you go down there and get Gremio's manager, or Bahia, or one of these bigger teams down in Brazil that understand what it's like to win football and win championships and do all these things, and bring them here and let them go do what they do best and manage the team that you have in front of them. Because I just don't
even go to Europe, and teams that just got relegated to the lower division typically are going to fire their coach.
Right.
Go get one of them.
Yeah.
They're going to be at a higher level, because that's the one thing, there's always the big debate, is the championship at a higher level than MLS and yada yada. The one thing the
Sure.
championship has for sure that is at a higher level is their coaching.
Yeah.
Is their manager and his staff is at a much higher level.
The championship is much tougher than the Premier League.
Yeah.
So the championship is volatile.
Sure.
If you're a good champion, if you could get a decent championship manager,
Mm-hmm.
then you're set. A manager I think of as Bielsa.
Mm.
If you could get Bielsa in, a manager who's wise beyond his years, who's been there, done that, won games, got into
Right.
the Premier League, won the championship so many bloody times he could probably count on multiple hands.
Sure.
But just the play, he has that Spanish DNA that so he can communicate with the players. He'd be an ideal person. Will he have the tolerance for it? I don't know. That's another thing.
Sure.
Personalities do clash, but he's just one of many people that come to mind. Who's another one that I'm thinking of?
Well, to me, the other thing I'm thinking about too is like Italian coaches that are at the lower end of the Italian league, like still quality managers that are over there, and then you also get the benefit of potentially attracting some of the stars that are playing in Italy to come over and play in MLS. Like I know we've made this joke because Luis Pineda's favorite player over in Italy is Lukaku. He's his favorite striker like across the league. Lukaku's value right now is at 20 million euros. Like if Lukaku wants to go and play in MLS and you get a manager who he's played for in Italy, what's to stop us from going to Lukaku and saying, hey, you ready to come to MLS? We'll give you a huge bag. We've got the manager that you want over here who knows how you play and knows how you operate. And I'm just saying, like, that's an example, right? I'm not saying it's exactly Lukaku, but those are things you can do when you pull the right manager in to go do that. Like I had heard rumors for the Richarlison thing that there apparently were ideas that they could replace Pareja with a manager that Richarlison likes to convince him to come to Orlando versus going to maybe another English team or wherever the heck else he wanted to go. I think he considered Brazil for a little bit too, but I think that he's out on Brazil right now. But whatever it is, well, he's out in general, but you know what I mean? But it's just one of those things of like, those are things that change games. You get a manager that players want to play for, you have more doors open for you, right? You're not stuck with the same, like having to pull from the same like group of players. There are players that might say at 28 or 29, you know what? Yeah, I'll go play in MLS for a couple seasons. Let's go see how it goes. I'll go earn a bag. I'm not going to get mugged, when I go out for a coffee because half the people aren't going to know or most of the people aren't even going to know who I am. So who cares? Let me go do those kind of things. So I think that's the question you have to start asking yourself is that, okay, what other benefits besides the on the field product could you get from a higher class manager that we're clearly not getting right now? I just don't know how much talent Oscar Pareja is attracting. I don't know, clearly we've seen so far that he hasn't really been able to raise the level all too much. I mean, we've had the one cup, but again, we did well in some of those lead up games, but we played. Again, I don't want to be that guy, but we played a USL team to win that cup, and I don't want to diminish what we've done, but that happened, right? It's a reality. So it's one of those things of what else can a quality manager bring to you? And I probably don't have to explain this to Luke at all, but like that's the question we should be asking ourselves. Like, what would a quality manager give you in terms of what you can attract? Because again, MLS is going to become more attractive after the World Cup, no doubt about that. But depending on how attractive it is, could depend on what resources you have.
Yeah, and the league's already there's already whispers that by 2030 the league's gonna, have a not where we're able to spend like Real Madrid money or even Premier League money, but the league's gonna do kind of a full overhaul of the salary cap and change things around there to where we're able to maybe. What Luke was saying, how we went from having the old aging star like a Kaká or David Beckham or or Pirlo type of player to where we went young South American, and now we're kind of going back to getting that not so aged star where they're in their late 20s, early 30s, to where by 2030, so, supposedly that we're able to go get somebody that's a 25, 26-year-old that's a starter for a Premier League side or one of the top teams in Bundesliga or whatever.
Right.
We're able to attract those guys because we're able to pay enough and pay the transfer fee.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing and the quickest move for the league to make in order for MLS to be competitive, and honestly, I would make it in the middle of the year if you could, if that meant MLS was going to get better talent, is get rid of the transfer fee in your budget charge. Yep. It's so silly that you have to go in here and try to navigate it, because no offense to Martin Ojeda and no offense to Marco Pasalic, they're not DPs anywhere else in the world, right? In terms of like being considered that level. I know DPs don't exist in other leagues, but they're not considered at that level, right? What you're getting paid for is your product on the field and the impact that you cause the team. So again, Ojeda just got paid, and rightfully so. He should have gotten a raise and all that stuff. But no offense, Marco Pasalic should be a TAM player at most. Like he just should be. But the problem is we have to pay his transfer fee out over all of these different years, and that's why you see these ridiculous contracts like Allende is going to be on for Miami. He's going to be signing like a 7-year contract or something stupid like that, because that's how they keep him under the cap and can pay him where he needs to be. But like putting transfer fees on those deals are ridiculous, and that to me that's the quickest way to get rid of all this foolishness of like, no, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing with the U22 initiative, right? Transfer fees don't matter. It doesn't matter what you pay them transfer fee wise. All that matters is they're under a certain age cap, and as long as they don't age out, you're good. That's the way it kind of should be and what it looks like. I know some people are all like, well, add more DP spots, do this, do that. I think the first thing you need to do is just get rid of these smaller rules that just bog down the whole system and how you have to understand it. Or like you get somebody like Miami who gets Atletico Madrid to cover the salary for an entire year, yet MLS makes it slip and say, oh, well, no, his contract was picked up or whatever it was, or whatever
his loan, his contract was renewed.
Yeah, whatever the verbiage was, where it was like, okay, there's clearly something foul here, like that doesn't make a ton of sense, and whatever it is. So like, to me, they should be working on that stuff right now. Those conversations should be happening right now to prime MLS teams to be ready for when the summer window opens for these teams to say post World Cup, let's go and snatch up as much of this talent as we possibly can, because we know there's interest from players to come over to MLS and play and do all those things, but it's just not going to happen if not enough teams have the opportunity to do it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I'm even on board with transfer fees, period. And I'm sure that's kind of what you were saying without saying it.
Yeah.
The transfer fees shouldn't be applied, period.
Yeah.
DPs, it's like 743,000.
Right.
That's stupid. One, you don't have transfer fees in any other sport. That's why the salary cap is the way it is in every other sport in America.
Right.
But two, America's the sport for every other major sport outside of, if you want to include cricket and rugby in there.
Right.
And so they need to. That's the first step into attracting talent, because you can get a player for $30 million, transfer fee,
right,
that will play for $5-6 million. That's
yeah.
That's Muriel's contract basically. If you include his almost, I mean, he was $1. If you include his transfer fee, or he didn't. His transfer fee was cheap, but still, if you include the max transfer fee into Muriel's contract, that's basically what he was making.
Right.
And you can get a player, and I know he's not, depending on who you ask, he's not world class, but Pulisic's making less than $6 million.
Yeah.
McKinney's making less than $6 million.
Right.
And they're, imagine Pulisic and McKinney playing against each other in the MLS.
Yeah. Well, like, to go back to my original example, Lukaku makes 7 million euros a year. Mm-hmm. So if you're willing to pay his whatever Napoli puts him at, 30 million or whatever, that's all that should matter. Your question should just be like, do I want to pay Lukaku 7 million a year, right? Or 7.5 after you do the conversion or whatever it is. Like, that's the question you should be asking, not, okay, if I've got to take his fee and I got to do this and I got to, like, all that stuff is just ridiculous. Like, just find a way to bring the best players into the league and don't muddy up the waters to make it confusing. Sure, there'll be some teams that'll try to run away with it, but it's not a sustainable model. I mean, even clubs like Barcelona have run into financial trouble and have had all kinds of issues with that because they overspent and didn't understand what they needed to do. Manchester City has broken rules and has had transfer windows locked out and things like that because there's still rules in place that you have to follow and things that you have to do. So sure, there'll be some teams in MLS that will run away with it, but again, because of how parity driven the MLS is going to be, even if you go and bring in all these players, it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to click, and it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to work out. So let the teams take the risk on that. Right now, you're kind of protecting a little bit of that risk, which I think is kind of nuts, honestly. But
yeah, no, definitely. And it's one of those, it's the most expensive sport in the world as far as player values go.
Yeah.
And contracts go. And the MLS, the one thing the MLS is really lagging behind in is what they pay their players and such. And that even goes into, kind of what we were talking about before and keeping, homegrown talent here.
Yeah.
So, feel like we've said all we could say about the roster and moves and coaching and everything. Before we start, the last thing we're going to talk about, David, I understand you got things that you may not be able to comment on,
Sure.
Because of what you do.
Yep.
Outside of, with social media, but, you don't want to, endanger your status with any of that. So, we completely understand that if you don't want to comment on what we're about to talk about, we completely understand.
Sure.
But, something that's near and dear to Luke, and my heart is the supporter groups. Obviously on Reddit today, it popped off a little bit, not a little bit, a lot. With the supporter groups, so I'm interested to hear from you guys to see, kind of on that note, if it's, if the supporter groups are progressing or regressing, and kind of, I feel like because of what we talked about in the pre-show, we all agree what they can do to mend it. But, if, one of you guys want to go ahead and comment, David, if you can comment on it, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, as long as I've been an Orlando City supporter, I was never, I found out late, of course, about supporter groups and stuff like that. Obviously, I wasn't so dense that I didn't know what the supporter section was or anything like that, right? And I knew what the groups were and all that kind of stuff. It just never was a thing that just appealed to me from the jump. It just wasn't something that I was, super into or anything like that. But then, obviously, as I saw, with time going on, sort of the impact and influence that they kind of put on the fans and offer for the club and things like that. There's a lot of, good things that I think they bring and they, do together and things like that. And there have been obviously some pretty glaring opportunities in the past of where they haven't done that. And they've, we've seen infighting and some of that infighting spreading outside of just those groups and kind of affecting other fans. And we've seen other fans want to start other groups and haven't been able to or weren't allowed to and things like that. So it's been a really interesting thing to kind of look at from afar and not being affiliated with it. Personally, I just choose to not be a part of any of the groups. I think my fandom runs deep enough that I don't necessarily need maybe that extra connection or that extra sort of linkage to anything. And that's just me personally. That's just how I feel about it. My best friend who comes with me to a lot of the Orlando City games feels the same way. We just kind of have enough of a kinship and attachment to the badge and sort of what's on the field and what's going on than necessarily needing to connect with those groups. I've been very fortunate for both groups to offer me stuff before in the past in full transparency, tickets that maybe I don't have access to or going to events that maybe I've thought I wouldn't be able to go to because of their help, and they've been helpful in that. But there's a very clear discourse amongst the fandom, not just between the two groups or even within the groups, but from the groups to the rest of the fans that kind of are in the stadium and what that looks like. And sort of alluding to what you were talking about earlier, obviously as one of the moderators on the Orlando City subreddit, I obviously saw this firsthand today and sort of how it played out with this post on it. And for those of you that didn't see it or know what it said or looked like, the question was it was just a simple question of sort of like, hey guys, I just want to know everyone's perspective on the current state of the supporter group landscape. Are we progressing or regressing? Do you think the wall should be not divided into two sides and instead focus on everyone, all thoughts and comments are welcome. And the user by the name of Calligrapher 964 was the one that sort of posed this question to everybody and what that looked like. And I feel like for a lot of it, it started off as a sort of like, okay, let's see kind of what questions you have or what you're trying to get at, because obviously in that body of that post, it wasn't really 100% clear sort of what this person was looking for in terms of, an answer or what their kind of thoughts were. But it divulged pretty quickly into sort of thoughts and opinions about, should the first 7 rows be dedicated to just supporter group members? If the supporter groups are so into making sure that fans are plugged in and attached, like, shouldn't they do a better job at trying to get people in the rest of the stadium sucked in and brought in to sort of what the supporter groups are doing? So a lot of those questions and things were sort of posed, and I thought in some degrees by a couple of the Ruckus members, I thought they were answered well. I guess some people in this chat weren't as high on that and didn't agree, especially the original poster had a lot of back and forth with a lot of these members and things like that. I'm not against asking the questions. I think all of us at one point or another, whether we're a part of a supporter group or not, have had questions about where do these special benefits come from? Why are there special benefits given to these groups and not to the rest of the supporter groups? I was one of those people before Jared Dillon came in who said, hey, as a season ticket member of X amount of years, why am I not getting as big of a platform to talk about my concerns and my issues? And even sometimes, like, my concerns and my issues are different than what the supporter groups go through in terms of what they're experiencing, right? Like, I personally sit on the south end, so I sit on the opposite side of the wall. And I have other issues, right? Like, I know I don't get covered by the rain, right? I'm in the second row. I don't have coverage from it. When it rains, and I get wet. And at this point, I've just accepted the fact that I'm going to be there regardless, no matter what. My biggest complaint has been, why can't I get cover over my section? And I've been told it's not feasible for the club to make it happen. But it took me months to try to get an answer to that simple question of why can't it be covered, right? So those are one of those examples of, I understand with the status of being there from the foundation and with the status of sort of trying to have as much of an inclusive group as you can, which I know some people will beg to differ on that, and I understand that there are certain things that are afforded to those groups that I'm not going to get. And I've accepted that in due time. What I will say, though, is I do feel like every season ticket member, at the bare minimum, though, deserves a platform and an opportunity to share their concerns and find a way to constructively resolve them if there are issues. For example, I had an issue last year because of where I sit with a couple of the photographers and videographers that sit in front of me who blocked my view for about 30% of the game. I'm not paying for tickets for a videographer to stand in front of me and block my view for 30% of the game. So I had to get my season ticket rep, my season ticket reps manager. We actually ended up getting a couple of people from the press office for Orlando City involved, because obviously those folks were a part of, fall under that purview. And we had to get some stuff resolved. Did it take longer than I wanted it to? Yes, it took like a month to get it resolved, but eventually it did get resolved. And I did ask myself the question that if this was a supporter group problem, would it have been fixed faster? It may have been. And I've seen things like this sometimes get fixed faster. So my biggest thing has always been, again, I appreciate what the supporter groups have offered me and have given to me in the past and all that kind of stuff. To a degree, sometimes I have felt the struggle of, if I'm not a part of the two big groups, I am missing out on some opportunities, which I don't think is a fair way to look at it. I think every season ticket member, whether they're a part of a supporter group or not, deserve the same foundational benefits. And that's not a supporter group problem, I don't think. To me, that's a club identification problem. I think the club should do a better job at identifying that regardless of where you are across the board, we're going to provide you the same opportunity and same service, irregardless of whether you're in a supporter group or whether you're just a season ticket member, or even if you're just somebody who gets a half season package, right? Or something like that. I know, I wish it would extend all the way down to the casual that just picks up a couple of tickets a year, but that might be taking it a step too far because it would be hard for the club to identify those folks consistently and try to resolve them. But I'm in the same seat every single game for anywhere between 17 and 20 games per season, depending on what we get, right? I'm in the same spot every single game, rain or shine, not to be cliche, but rain or shine, in my seat, in my section, doing my thing. And to me, I expect sort of the same level of service, and I don't know that that's really happening for everybody across the board.
I agree. I think you've pretty much nailed it completely. I, I, I think me and John, we stand in the same section. I feel like we have the same sentiment, especially with like when it's non Orlando City employees policing rows that especially they have been given this, I wouldn't want to say jurisdiction,
Mm-hmm.
but this right to police these rows, and trying to explain that, as you said before, to the casual fan. How are you supposed to explain that to somebody, because it doesn't happen anywhere else, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't happen anywhere else where a person who buys the same ticket as you can tell people what to do and where to sit, and limit you on your ability. And I know it says it on the ticket, these rows are reserved for whatever, but when it says general admission,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of is misleading. It still is misleading. So I kind of understand where you're coming from. I know John probably has a few words that can add on to that. So yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, just because it's on the ticket doesn't mean that they'll read it. I mean, how many times are we in line and you know, a third of the people in line are there for tickets over by where David sits, and they have to be redirected around the stadium, and
Yeah.
it says it multiple times when you purchase it, after you purchase it, leading up to the match, and on the way to the gate.
Right.
That specific gates for supporters only. My biggest thing, and I've said it on here before, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail because I know it's we're recording this on Monday night after the main show, so it is getting quite late. So I'll try to keep it short. My biggest gripe, well, first I'll start with this. The most laughable thing I saw on the feed, and I didn't get to see all of it because I wasn't I was out most of the day. I had a vacation day because I had family in town. But the most laughable thing that I saw was when somebody said that there's no drama inside the supporter groups. I know because I know people inside the supporter groups. I see it on a match to match basis that there is, period. There's a reason we didn't have a TIFO or a TIFO, however you want to pronounce it, all but one match last year. And that's because the two supporter groups couldn't come to terms to keep it easy. I obviously, for those of you that have watched the show for a while, the main show, I was a Ruckus member from 2014 until 2021, and my biggest feeling with both supporter groups that they want to control what happens in the wall, all over. Whether it's how you support the club, whether you're one person that does the chants the entire time and jumps up and down, or you're somebody more on the edge of what Luke and I are, where we watch the game, we yell at the players, we yell at the refs, we yell at the opposing players warming up. You do that. It's either their way of supporting and their way of, and I'm saying this because of what was said in the post, in the comments, and their way of having fun, or you're not allowed there. It's almost like it's a superiority complex that the people, not all the people, some people in the supporter groups have. And it's, a lot of it is high school drama that just needs to be dropped, and they just need to, the both supporter groups need to accept that we're all there to support the same club. And if a lot of the members of both supporter groups, especially we're more on the ruckus side, but we're all the way out on the wing, if they were more worried about policing it for opposing jerseys and opposing shirts and stuff like that than policing their own supporters, the wall would be a much more welcoming place for Orlando City supporters. Because in my opinion, if you don't have purple, white, or black on, and if it's white or black, it's either a blank shirt or has Orlando City, even gray, has Orlando City on it, like the shirt I have on here, you shouldn't be allowed, the black, white, and gray can be blank, but whatever. It shouldn't have, you know, Real Madrid on it or Inter Milan or Bayern Munich or anything like that. It should be 100% either it's a neutral shirt or it's an Orlando City shirt. I am so tired of seeing opposing clubs, in there. I'm so sick and tired of seeing even USA shirts in there. This isn't a US, unless it's a Freeman one. That's a little bit different. He's playing for, was playing for our team. But even then, you're at an Orlando City match. You wear Orlando City gear, or you wear, like a lot of times Luke and I will wear a black, plain black shirt, depending on the weather. I'm so sick and tired of seeing that. If the supporter groups are more worried about telling about policing that than policing, oh, you can't sit in the first 7 rows, even when they're wrong, because that happened with me last year where I proved somebody that holds high standing and one of the supporter groups that they were wrong with what they thought was the rules of the supporter section. Then the wall would be at a better place. But to me, it all boils down to how everything was started with how the charter was written out and all that. We're one of the few clubs in the world. I've reached out to other people that I've seen on in social media that are members of other supporter groups from clubs around MLS. And I've learned that we're one of the few clubs in the world, not just our league, but the world, that has 2 official supporter groups. Most other, every other one I've heard of or learned about or talked to somebody that's a member of, it's, oh yeah, we have the wall, using, in essence, that's the supporter section. And then we have, 5, 10, whatever it is, official supporter groups. And, that's where the issue, it kind of balances out the power. The power, instead of being to, think of a bar graph, to have all, 50-50 power, it kind of levels everything out to where it's, the decisions are a little more balanced and a little less, radical one side or the other, if you will. And, I just want to be there, support my team how I see fit. If it's one of the matches I decide to lose my mind and chant the whole time and do all that, let it be. If it's me wanting to yell at the opposing players while they're warming up, let it be. If I just want to stand there and remain silent and watch the game, let it be. And I really feel like when you go to so many matches, you really get that feel. Maybe not, if you're a casual that bought tickets to the wall because it's your first match, you don't necessarily feel that. But when you go week after week after week, like I do, you really kind of start to feel the feel alienated because you see the looks and other things like that. And we're all there at the end of the day. This isn't me hating the supporter groups because they have all this perceived power or anything like that. This is me just wanting to be there. And us, look at the Miami match, for instance. Other than the issue with people policing the supporter section, everybody, I felt like in that supporter section was there for one purpose, and that was to support our club. And that's the way it should be every single match, whether we're playing, Lexington from the USL, or we're playing, Miami, or we're playing Tigres. It shouldn't matter. Every match, you're there to support our club, and that's what you're there for. And honestly, that's what makes the supporter section, so much different than other sections because of the way we handle away supporters here in the States. That entire section is there to support our club and only our club. And that's how I want to see it. And the fact that a simple post can blow up, whether may have been instigating or not, the fact that it can blow up shows that there are those issues within them, whether the two supporter groups want to acknowledge them or not. And it's just, I think betterment for a club and all that. It just needs to be, keep the two supporter groups, whatever. But the leadership of those groups need to realize that you're there to support the same club, whether you're a member of that supporter group or not. And the big thing from a club perspective that I have an issue with is that you can't get away, match tickets in a section of Orlando City fans unless you're a member of those supporter sections. To me, the club should handle the distribution and say, okay, we have, you know, 500 tickets to go up to Atlanta or whatever the number might be. We'll give this many of the supporter sections, but this many's for, the season ticket members that aren't, for instance, like David brought up, that aren't, a part of a supporter group. And David, would you be, you as an example, would you be more likely to go to an away match if you were able to be with a bunch of Orlando City fans, or just buy tickets wherever in the stadium?
No, I'd rather be with Orlando City fans for sure.
So, and that's one thing. I know Luke has that same gripe about the ticket distribution, because we were going through Heckenbeck, and luckily, the ILF made the correct decision to release the remaining tickets to the general public, and we were able, me and Luke were able to go to the Rowdies match last year and had a great time at the match. But and even at that match, as important as that rivalry is to the people that have been around this club for since the beginning or close to the beginning, there were still the infighting between supporter groups. And it's one of those things that's sad to see. There's always going to be disagreements, but for it to reach the level that it has, this past season, it's a sad state that we're in. You guys got anything else to add on that?
No, I just more than anything, I've said this since day one, supporting Orlando and the people I talk to and what have you, is obviously we're all going to have our own opinions. We're all going to have different ideas on how we want to support our club and things like that. But I've always come back to the fact of, and I tell people this in my own section, is as long as I can support how I'd like to support, and as long as you're allowed to support how you're going to support, and we're not getting in the way of each other or we're not causing issues for each other, that's all I care about. We're all here for the same thing, right? We're here to support Orlando City. We want to see them lift trophies. We want to see them respect the badge and everything that goes with that. And the other thing that isn't just a supporter group thing, but I think fandom in general, with not just this team but others, is that can we stop measuring how deep our fandom runs? I don't care if you've been here since day one of USL and you followed every move and you followed every match and all that kind of stuff, or if you're just somebody who, when you have time, you go to a game, you watch it on TV when you can't go, and you maybe catch 5 games a year. To me, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as you're here to support the team, and as long as you're able to do it in a way that is fun for you and also is able to display your passion, then that's all I care about. I don't need to know all the other BS that goes into it too. I mean, my fandom is no less than anybody else's fandom. I would argue, as somebody who talks about Orlando City at least an hour and a half or more a week, my knowledge base is a little bit higher than other people. But do I think I'm a better fan or a bigger fan than other people? No, I think we're all just different degrees of fans that are here to support what we're doing, and the three of us choose to share our opinions in a different venue than other people do, right? And so that's why we do what we do. So I think that's the other part of all of this that just I would love to see kind of go away, is let's stop measuring each other's fandom against each other. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as we're here for the same reason and we're not, putting people down in a disrespectful and just gross kind of way, let's just support who we want to support and how we want to support them. Let's just try to be as inclusive as we can about it. That's really all that should matter at this point.
I agree with you completely. I feel like, and it kind of echoes this. It's kind of an imagery. It's like, well, we get these rows, going back to like the rose thing in the ruckus, and it's like, we get and the Iron Lion film. I'm not going to just exclude one or the other on this one. With both supporters groups, is we get these rows because our support's better than your support, or we're more passionate supporters than you, and we get a stand because our we can express it better than you. And you echoed it perfectly. Is I am no better than somebody that buys a $5 ticket and comes for the first time. We're all the same people. We're all here to support the same thing. The suites, the people who sit in the suites, the people that sit in a seat, and there's people that are standing. There are no difference between us. We're all here to support the same thing, and that gets lost all the time, and it gets lost more than it should. And I don't think it's ever been found. I think it's always been like that. It's always like, well, like it's seats versus the standing section, or it's seats versus the suites, or it's seats versus whatever, and it's like the standing versus everything else. And it's like it should not be like that, and it always has. And it starts with the elitism mindset of, well, I've been here longer than you. How long have you been supporting? Yeah, it's like I might be supporting for a day, but obviously I haven't. I've supported this club obviously more than half of my life.
Sure.
But it's the fact that I'm not walking around and there's people that have showed up to games where I'm like, hey, welcome, because they're friends of friends, and I'm like, hey, welcome, enjoy the game, learn
Right.
about the game.
Yeah.
Just make it an enjoyable experience for people. They might know nothing about the game, and I'm not expecting people to know everything about the game
Sure.
because they've never been here before, and there's no culture of the sport. So I'm like, that's fair enough. And like, I'm not walking around like I'm the Mr. I Am because I know about the sport. It is what it is. If you
Right.
put the effort to learn about the sport, that is all that matters. And even if you don't, you still have that right to be there. And you are no better than me, John, anyone. You're not better than anyone. What? So that's just my perspective on it. Is that sometimes that always gets lost. It somehow does. It's like, join this and join that. And I'm like, you could be this. And I'm like, but we're all fans at the end of the day. That's it.
Right.
That is
Yeah.
it at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we're at the end of the day, we're all fans, and it's kind of like in essence, family reunion. You may have a disagreement with your sister that spans 20 years, but you still show up to the family reunion to support the bigger issue at hand, which is the family, which at the end of the day, essentially, being a fan or a supporter of a soccer club is like a family, and that's the important thing is putting your ego aside and being there to support the same team, support the same thing and make your voices heard. Because when Orlando City's supporter section, is fully there, that it creates a better atmosphere, which gets the rest of the stadium involved, and then it quickly turns into the best home field advantage in the sport. And we had that at a point, and over the years we've lost that a little bit, and it's not too late, and then not even that, in my opinion, not that difficult to get that back to where every home match is like that Miami match at home from last year. Like, to me, if you turned up extra hard for that Miami match, and then you just don't cheer or don't do anything the rest of the matches, you're just as bad as Muriel. You know, and that, because that's how we looked, how or whoever you want to pick on for the downfall of the season last year, because anybody that looks at that Miami match and then looks at how we finished the year can tell we really turned up. The club, the team really put in an extra effort against Miami, and then laid an egg and didn't care. A good majority of the rest of the matches, and it's a topic that we can go in circles and have a whole nother 2+ hour show on, I'm sure. But I feel like these guys, all three of us agree that, and we've all said it, that we're there to support the same thing. Just let us support how we see fit, and support the team and show up.
Showing up is all that matters. And even if you watch from the TV and you can't make the game,
Yeah.
you're still a supporter of the club. Like,
Absolutely.
because there's people in the UK who I know who support Orlando and they can't physically make the games, and that
Absolutely.
again doesn't make it's their living circumstances. They have lives, and there's nothing more important than your own personal life and your family and everything like that. That goes before everything in football. So, like, if you can't make it due to your circumstances, don't feel like I have to show up to games because they're like, it's everything. No, it's not. Your family's first. If you have a life, you got to get on with your life. You watch the games, and that is all that matters. You just support the team.
Well, it's the same thing too with a lot of people this offseason speaking with their wallets instead of maybe just their voices, right? I know, John, you're a good example of that, of, going from season tickets to going in a different direction to get, some tickets for this season. And you're not the only one, right? There's been a slew of people that, especially in this space, that have kind of just come out and said, hey, it's not worth it for me anymore. I just don't see the value, or things are expensive, or whatever the reason might be. And that doesn't mean that they're less fans for doing it, right? It doesn't mean if John can't make every match that he's less of a fan than anybody else is, or that his opinion doesn't matter as much as anybody else's does. So just because you're the louder voice, or you may be, in a certain area more than others, doesn't make it any different. I didn't physically attend the Lexington scrimmage, but I got so much information from other people who wanted me to know about it, and feedback from sources that I talked to, that I provided a better recap than a good chunk of people that went there. I didn't need to physically be there to provide information to people, and that's fine. In that circumstance, it worked out. And so it's just one of those things of, we all just need to understand that there are different ways to support this club, and there's not one size that should fit all. There's just no reason to think that way. There's no reason to act that way. I'm never going to judge people for speaking with their wallet or speaking the words that they're going to speak. Like I said before, as long as you're not disrespectful, and as long as you're not crossing boundaries with certain people, I have no problem with whatever opinions you are. I'm going to probably disagree with a good chunk of the fan base throughout this entire season, but that's my prerogative. I'm allowed to have the opinion that I have, because I have a different opinion of football than other people have of football, and that's fine. I mean, listen, like I've said before earlier in the podcast, I grew up in Clearwater. I was a Tampa Bay Mutiny fan. That team was horrid for a good chunk of its short history that it existed for, right? So I understand what that looks like. That's what football shaped me. Most of the time I watched soccer in person was when the national teams came to town, and we were lucky enough to get some tickets at Raymond James when I was a kid, right? That was my soccer. And then whatever I could watch on, NBC when the Premier League was on, or whatever it was, right? That was the soccer I got. So we're all going to come from different perspectives and different ways to look at it. And as long as we just understand that that's the way it's going to be, and we can talk about it, then that's all that matters. Because again, the thing the club can benefit from is a lot of us having the passion that runs deep, right? We use the cliche all the time of bleed purple. Like, I'm convinced at this point I bleed purple because of all the things that I put into this, and how much unhealthily this team has changed my health and moods from one side to another, right? But it's just, that's how deep it runs for me. So I don't need a clock to say I've been a fan for 5 years, 27 days, and whatever. That doesn't matter to me. I don't care about that. As my section likes to call me, I'm the resident encyclopedia. I give stats and facts about players all the time because I do the research, but I don't diminish the rest of my section mates for not knowing that stuff. They don't need to. They don't care. And I like being the guy to be like, hey, I've got that information for you. Don't worry about it. So it's the same thing across the board. Of the one thing I do love about my season tickets and the same section that I've been for the past 4 years is I have a family that sits in the section with me. I consider all those people that are near me, that are at the same games that I am, part of my family. They are close people to me. Orlando City Soccer is my religion, for better or for worse. And that's just the way I look at it. So, yeah, I just wish we could all just understand each other's sort of where we're coming from a little bit better, and just accept it for the different levels of passion or love for it that exist out there.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's goes back to, it's the badge over everything, badge over players, badge over, group affiliations, all of that. If you're there to support the same club and don't discriminate against me and the people that I care for, we're going to be on good terms. It's when that discrimination starts, and that I have I start having an issue with, and putting a group over the badge, over the betterment of the badge, in my opinion, isn't the way to grow a successful supporter culture and a successful fan base. So, well, thank you, David, for joining us. I said
Absolutely.
last week, let us know if you guys, you listening and watching, want to join us. Leave your comments. We appreciate everybody's comments. Those that reached out to us and the other members of the show to say how they, what they liked, what they didn't like. We don't want just positive feedback. If you guys want to hear us talk, more about tactics than something else that we may talk about, we can talk more tactics and put diagrams up over our faces instead of having to stare at our.
I think we'll get more to tactics when the season starts, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
The season's not started yet, so I don't think we could talk about tactics until the season starts.
Yeah, because that's what Luke and I love talking is tactics.
I know, right? But we've got nothing to go off at the moment.
So, we really appreciate, David. We appreciate you listening out. You're invited anytime to come on and
thank you guys.
Join us, especially if, especially when, we pick up a new player, because, usually I do my own research on when we get a new player and then get irritated and, just like, okay, whatever, this looks good. Let's look at some YouTube highlights. Your research that you do on the players. Is the new changeover with the stats going to affect you at all?
Yeah, so it did a little bit. So I relied, anyone who's read my stuff, I relied heavily on FBref, and obviously with all the data that they lost and various other moves has definitely thrown me off a little bit. Thankfully, I made some inroads with the folks over at Yscout, and then I do know somebody who does work at Opta who's willing to share some of the data that I ended up getting. The problem is with a lot of the players that we're linked to, especially in South America, they don't tend to use Opta or like the bigger services. They're slowly getting back on there. The Colombian League actually just announced pre their season that just started, they were going back to Opta this season. So their data will be on there. But yeah, I have a couple of tips and tricks that I've been trying to do. And with a lot of the longer articles, because on average, my player breakdowns are about 3,000 words, which is a lot for people to take in. I try to add as many visuals as I can, highlight videos, graphs. If there's anything to take away from my articles for anybody out there that, wants to read one, I've got one on Brian Ojeda, Luis Otavio, Tiago. I did one on Dusan, but unfortunately that one's not going to work out now. But and I am working on one for Iago, so that one should hopefully come out this week if I've got the time to put it together. But really, the part you should focus on are the player comps. I always comp the player to folks that we already have on our team, because I think it gives fans a really good idea of sort of where players sit compared to other players. So, for example, on the Dusan one, and I'll do the same thing with the Iago, I comp them against Janssen and Brekalo because they're two different styles of center backs. So I think it gives fans a good idea of sort of what that looks like and how it sort of works. With Iago, it's a little bit more difficult though, because he played a lot of his time with the U20s. That data is harder to find. So I kind of have to use my Brazilian sources if I can to try to see if they've got stats for me or sites that work. So it takes a lot of digging and a lot of different stuff, but I also try to give fans a really good idea of what the player is about, where they're from, if they have a family, sort of what their family is, and try to give just folks a better idea of sort of what these guys are all about before they hit the field. Because a lot of times we just look at stats and go, okay, they rank in this percentile or they do this. But I think it's nice to know just sort of the full picture and sort of what it looks like. Like if you didn't know that Otavio was already married and he's only 19 years old, so like, and he's been married for 2 years, so like that's a lot of people don't know that and don't know that he's bringing his wife over with him, and so like things like that I think are kind of important for folks to see. So yeah, so my latest one will be Iago. Hopefully I'll get that done this week. And you can find that on the Loud and Proud website. I've been writing a lot for Luis to help fill out the website and what that looks like. So you'll see some stuff on there.
Yeah, the one that I think it was the Otavio one. He's the Brazilian midfielder. I don't have the sheet in front of me.
Yeah.
I think he's the one that really, because I was excited. I'm excited. I love Brazilian style of play.
Sure.
So anytime we're talking about signing most Brazilians, I'm excited. And he's the one that really got me ultra excited for him when you did your player comparison with him and Cartagena and Atuesta.
Yeah.
And it really, you really got a presence to see. He's kind of a mix of both.
Right.
Where you see areas he needs to improve that both, are a little better or excel in. And, just, it was, that was great. And so, it's a lot of good information on there. But thank you to those who will be watching. We should be here every Wednesday night, posting about 5 p.m. The audio may be up a little bit earlier in the morning, just depending on when David Valentin has time, because he's the one that takes care of that, and I upload it to YouTube. And like I said before, if you guys have any comments, if anybody wants to join us for an episode, a short period of an episode, let us know. We'd be happy to have anybody's perspective on. You could disagree with us on Taifi and think he's going to be better than Freeman was, or think Cartagena would be better as a defensive back than a 6. Our opinion is that we're gonna think you're wrong, but we want to hear it because we want to because we could be wrong. We could be missing something because of our perspective on it. So, anybody's welcome to join if they want, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. Whether it be the audio or the YouTube video. And as always, vamos